This is Kelly Wentworth from Survivor San Juan del Sur, and you're about to listen to one of my favorite sources for all things Survivor. This is Survivor Talk with D&D. So find your flint, grab a bag of rice, and all your fishing gear, and let the bartering begin. Take it away, D&D.
Hello, my name's David, and I just competed in the 2015 Durham Warrior Survivor Challenge, and I lost.
Hello, my name is Joel. I'm from Survivor Borneo, and I just competed in the Durham Warrior Survivor Challenge 2015, and I also lost.
Hi, I'm Wendy, and I just competed in the 2015 Durham Warrior Survivor Challenge, and I kicked butt and I won.
And I'm Dwaine, and I have no idea why I'm here. Because I did not play in the 2015 Survivor Durham Warrior Survivor Challenge.
You got a nice voice. At least it'll give you that. You have a very nice voice.
There you go. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Survivor Talk with D&D. It's a little different tonight. David and I are just two best friends who love to talk about the show Survivor, and so that's what we're doing. Tonight we are talking about the Durham Warrior Survival Challenge, which if you don't know what that is, well, you're about to learn about it. And we are joined by two very special guests who've already introduced themselves. First off, ladies first, the winner of the 2015 Durham Warrior Survival Challenge, ladies and gentlemen, Wendy Langford.
Woo!
Hello, Wendy. How you feeling?
I'm feeling fantastic.
Yeah, I bet you are, you winning woman, you.
Hey, wait, I got to show you all before we get going.
Okay.
This is
Look at that.
This is my prize. He's right next to me.
Yeah. Wow. And from Survivor Borneo, Joel himself. Hello, Joel. Let's give you a round of applause. How you feeling, Joel?
I'm feeling all right. Took a couple days to get back to it, but today was the first day I kind of was mentally and physically back to it. But it took a few days. I was surprised.
Yeah. And do you want to tell everybody why you're on the show tonight? Didn't David, like, twist your arm or something?
Well, yeah, I figured since I so handily trounced David out of the competition, we would do him a little solid and get back over here and recap that.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll recap just that part of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean it was a short part. You know, he did his best, and I think we could probably recap. I want to do it two ways. You guys are probably usually interviewing people, but I also have David, who's here, who is going to be privy to a lot of things that I'm unaware of. One, what was going on with the rest of the people during the challenge, then what happened, what was going off, how much trash talking was going on. You know, because we were so involved, because both Wendy and I were there until the very, very end, and David had a lot more free time because he got eliminated so much earlier.
Yeah.
So I want to know what was going on.
So much free time.
I had to put up with this for 24 hours and then get kicked out of the game. So welcome to my world.
So the cool thing about the Durham Warrior Survival Challenge, and I'm going to let David give a little more info, but I just want to give my 2 cents in, is Bob Crowley, of course, winner of Gabon, I believe. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, I'm not the Survivor savant that David is. But Bob Crowley lives up in Maine, and he does this Wounded Warrior project, or he's part of it, and this raises money for that. And I want to tell you something. This is Survivor condensed down into 4 days, and I think especially Joel, who's played Survivor, will be able to attest to this. This isn't your summer camp survival game. All right, this isn't, okay, kids, go line up. We're gonna throw water balloons at the wall, and if you pop yours, then you win the challenge.
Oh, I wish that was the challenge.
No, this is not that. This is Survivor, CBS level puzzles, everything. Except we have, I think, like 8 challenges the first day. Oh, total of 22 challenges over a 4-day period. So, David, why don't you tell them a little bit about the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge before we go and talk about the weekend?
Well, if you really want to know about it, you can go online and Google it. But it came from a poolside discussion between John Vahada and Bob Crowley. John had the idea to organize this. Bob had the land, and it just took off from there. And then 3 seasons later, one Russell, one Laura, and one Wendy, you got 3 winners, and you got 3 great seasons. And every season, if you look at the videos, is bigger and bigger, more colorful, more people, more volunteers. It's amazing. And it's really an experience. One of my favorite moments of the weekend, and I had a ton of favorite moments, was on Saturday between challenges. And I would look at Troy Zan, who I guess I'm name dropping there because we got to play with Troy Zan. But he, when we'd go to our lockdown area, which we weren't locked down because we could talk all we wanted, which I didn't do enough of, but we'd go to that little lockdown area, and Troy Zan would just lay down to go to sleep. He'd grab a handful of rice, and then he'd lay down to go to sleep and say, dude, this is tough. So for Troy Zan to say that in the middle of the day, he just kept going on about how this was so real and so like the game. I think the hardest part is the social game, the strategy game, because if you're not on top of it, you're playing it at 10 times the speed that you might play it over 39 days. And Joel can probably attest to that. If by the time you realize what you need to do, your name's getting written down, and somebody's taking your torch, and you're getting a breath mint. So it goes pretty quick.
From Kathy, from Psycho Kathy.
You had to plan so much farther ahead per event. Usually if you're going to do the show, you would have the event. Maybe you're going to go back to the camp. You're going to talk a little bit. With ours, there wasn't as much strategy. There was more strategy in this game than in ours combined. It was very intense, but you had to think a few steps ahead. And luckily I teamed up with the doc right away, and we stayed true. But coming into this, having 15 years to think about it, there were so many levels to what has to happen as the game progresses, and this was in such fast forward, really compacted in there. It was over 3 days, but 22 challenges over 3 days, plus a couple nights out in the jungle or the woods. It was far more grueling than I thought, and like you said, Troy Zan laying out, we took naps whenever we possibly could. The fatigue level was very high, and also the mental fatigue level was very high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I was just going to say that when I had my entry interview when the game started, they said, do you think you could win the game? And my answer was 100% only if I could play a social game. And I didn't know in 3 or 4 days if that was going to be possible. But it was possible, but it was a much different social game than I think it would be if it was stretched out to a full season, where if you blindside someone, you have 3 days to make amends for that, or if you flip, you have 3 days to get in with a different group. This was very condensed.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask both Wendy and Joel how their game started, because for those of you who weren't there, the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge started differently for the fans versus the, quote, favorites of the returning survivors. There were 6 returning survivors, and I'll let Joel tell you who they were. But Joel, if you could tell us a little how your game started, how the weekend started for you, and then, if you want to, a little bit of how you and Jill connected so quickly.
Well, for me, coming through it, so many years later, and I've had so many years to think about what I wanted to do, but I got kind of messed up because my plane was delayed. Yeah. And I didn't know, coming into this, I didn't know if it was going to be, hey, let's fly in, let's sit around, let's have a little powwow before I go out into the wilderness. But they took me right from the airport, and there was no delay time. I just went directly out there, but my plane was delayed, so everybody else had kind of met already. Mm-hmm. And then by that time, and they had Torrentino stand in for me. Right. And the other survivors, which were, Nina, Troy Zan, Brooke, Jamie, they were already kind of hanging out together. Right. And I kind of stepped in, and I'm thinking, all right, well, I could be kind of in trouble here because these guys already kind of bonded. I knew that in a regular Survivor, after going through it, I would never actually make any sort of alliance before the first day and a half. I want to spend some time with the people. I want to see who I'm dealing with. I don't want to walk up there and just start making an alliance with somebody that has no backbone, or was there just with some strange, idea that it's all about big moves and blindsiding, all the silliness that has its place, but only little spices here and there. So I stepped into something where I was an outsider coming in because they had already met each other. Right. Stepping into it, I knew that I had my layers to the game that I wanted to do, and that was primarily assess who was there, figure out who had the highest character, and then align with the person with the highest character. And that's not a slight on anybody that was with our group, because the group that I was with was impressive. They were very impressive people on many levels. But the doctor struck me as somebody that I would say would be like a Gretchen from my season, but smarter. Who was somebody who was solid as a rock, highly intelligent, and right away we kind of bonded. And within 2 hours, we're walking back, and we looked at each other, and we just said, as long as this thing goes on, I will never put your name down, and you never put my name down. Right. And then we took it a little level farther than that. We said, as long as we're playing, now we don't need to be getting water together and hanging out together like we're big pals. We don't want anybody to know that we have an alliance together. But if somebody happens to say, hey, let's get Joel to blindside him, or somebody says to me, hey, let's get the doc to blindside her, our code was going to be, hey, you know, David's a Packer fan. And that was going to be our way of saying, you know, David's talking about knocking you out of here.
Oh, I like that.
And we kind of went through the whole thing so that we wouldn't have to get into a big discussion with Jill and myself that went from the front to back. Our signals between us were the slightest little signals that nobody else was going to pick up on. And she was excellent at it. Excellent at it. Just, I mean, an eyebrow raise, a little comment here and there, the slightest little tweaks. And we played that from front to back. And that was just the first layer. If you go from these things from front to back, when people get into Survivor and they're watching Survivor, and Wendy's going to attest to it, I think she got a rude awakening when she got out there that it's far more intense. The scheming is far more intense. And when you have people, you know, like, you know, the people that did get eliminated before us, everybody's just always thinking big moves and stuff like that. The big moves, the blindsides, that's later. You've got a lot of heavy lifting to do before you even can get to the point of doing a blindside. Because that's, you know, and this is just many years of talking with Jervis and everybody, and they've gone through it and everything, that, you know, it's about controlling it, teaming up with the right people. You know, I don't know how far you want to get into the whole story, but that was the first 3 or 4 hours after I got there that had been set up.
Well, one thing that I will say to you is, since I was on the video crew, I got to talk to a lot of people behind the scenes, and you and Jill had everybody fooled. At least everybody that I talked to. They thought it was you and Brooke.
Right.
And they never put you and Jill together. And whenever we would have confessionals, and I watched all the confessionals, you and Jill were always on the same page. Brooke was usually either close or on the same page, and Troyzan, one time Troyzan was close and Brooke wasn't, and the other time Brooke was close and Troyzan wasn't.
And that's exactly your precise, exactly, because how, unfortunately, this is the hard part. This is the Sue Hawk crying rat and snake speech. That's the part where the feelings really get hurt. Is it's not a team win. There's only one winner.
Right.
Wendy was that winner, and she had to do a lot to get to that win, and she had to fight through a lot to get to that win. But the setup that I was, so you're going to take your first group that you're going to meet that first night. You're going to tie in with somebody, and that's your inner circle, but then you need to have layers as that goes out. Yeah. And then you're going to have your big layer, which was the Dave, who was too darn smart. We put him on that outside layer because, like, that guy, right away, you know, real quiet, I was like, big man needs to go quick. And because, not quick, but take that whole group over the first finish line, which is the merge. And if that whole group goes over there, over the merge, you don't eliminate people because they're the strongest or the whatever. You eliminate somebody that once you get past that merge, especially when you got a tribe shuffle like we did, you know, Dave was highly dangerous. To me, David was the most dangerous person that was not in our group. And then once you had the big group, then you keep going in, and then you had the 6 of us, which was the 4 survivors and Wendy and Bob. Matt was in Wendy's spot, but Matt became a lone wolf. Not a lone wolf, but a serious thing. But then we kept on kind of going in and going in and going in. Then it was there was layers to it that were very complex. It is the most complex game there is. I mean, there's nothing there's nothing more difficult than playing chess with a blowtorch up your butt.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what Survivor is.
See, when we got,
I can imagine that. Yeah.
after that tribe shuffle, which I was excited as a fan, like Wendy, but I wasn't exactly excited as a player because we didn't have the even numbers. We had 4 gold, 3 blue, and 1 purple. 4 very strong gold. Unfortunately, they were probably the strongest. Nothing against Jamie or Nita, but you 4 could have practically won those challenges just about by yourselves.
Yeah,
but
sure.
As soon as we got to camp, you and Jill took off
Yep.
to make a water run, and that's why I wanted to go. That's why I wanted to go with you. And to me, I think Wendy and I were kind of in the same boat in that we saw you and Jill playing the hardest while trying to play the most nonchalant.
Mm-hmm.
Brooke was like a little sister, and Troyzan was like a cousin. So he wasn't as tight as you and Jill, or possibly I saw it as you and Jill 1 and 1, then Brooke, and then Troyzan number 4. And what I wouldn't give for 5 minutes after that challenge that took me out to tell Troyzan you're actually number 5 because I think Wendy just got adopted. I would love to have had those moments back again.
Well,
obviously I was too late.
There was one thing that was missed in there. Now, because right away, and then this is the mean part as well. And this is something that Richard Hatch taught me with the first time around. And then had a lot of years to think about it afterwards. With my first time going around, I was all about team. I grew up, my dad was a basketball coach. Everything was about being on the team. And I wanted to take my first Pagong tribe and bring them over. Richard took it to the next step, that step that I incorporated in this time, which is the real hard part. It's the hurtful part. And the only reason that Rudy, Sue, and Kelly made it to the end is because Richard saw those are the people that he could team up, that he could beat at the end.
Mm-hmm.
At first, that was Matt. Matt was our person that we were going to team up with. They were like, because he flipped that canoe over in the beginning, he couldn't even kind of get it together. It looked like he was physically falling apart. So we thought maybe we could beat that guy. Wendy really was she was kind of in there because I didn't really know Wendy. She was a quiet person. She had a tent, which I was, we were like, hey,
Bring the
Used her
tent.
for her tent.
that type of thing. But then as it progressed, she showed that she was a sleeper. So was Matt. Matt became incredibly dangerous and loyal. Wendy proved how loyal she was. So then Matt was on the out, and we had to make the move. I mean, we threw that challenge. And
I think that part of it, for the 4 of us that came over, because it was 4 survivors and then 3 from the original Chawadi and Matt. Was I happy to meet all of you? Absolutely. But gameplay, I was like, damn, this sucks. And so as someone observant, which is how I spent my first night, the first night when we took those rafts in,
Right.
by the time I had my 2-hour raft trip to get to the island, I already knew 3 people that I wanted out of there just by being quiet and listening. And I think in a game that's so quick, and I'm a super fan, but we had uber fans, and they were so excited. Many people had applied many times to be on the real show. And so people were almost jumping over each other to show I'm that player, I'm going to be that player. And if you're quiet and you sit back and watch it, you can learn how to manipulate it. And same thing.
Now, what was your reasoning? Why would you have gotten rid of those people?
Why would I have gotten rid of those people?
Yeah.
The first few people that jumped out at me as just going overboard playing the game, I just thought to myself, I'm going to sit back and watch them self-destruct. And they were all gone almost all of them. One came to the merge. Because they were too obviously aggressive. I almost felt like, have you not watched the show for 30 seasons and seen that if you were that aggressive person, the target's going to be on your back? On the flip side, if you're quiet, I was going to say, on the flip side, if you're quiet, that can be a negative too, but in this 4-day game, I felt it was a real benefit for me.
Yeah, because when I'm thinking about that as well, I was on a different barge. They called it a barge, but it was just wood that barely floated. But
it was 2 hours. It was a real challenge. It was one of the hardest challenges of the weekend.
I thought it was.
Meanwhile, Joel was flying in first class. But
I actually was in first class. Yeah, coming in.
But when we were on our barge was more concentrated on winning. They got out in that big lead, and they kept looking back. And I think you can probably ask Kristen. I said about 4 words the whole time, and it was, "Do you want to turn?" or let me take a turn. I was listening. I was listening to who talked, how they talked, who was working. Like Chris Lord was up front just paddling. He wasn't talking a lot, and with Katie, they were just paddling and paddling and paddling, and I kept an eye on that. They were kind of quiet, but they were working. And then Katie jumped out and pushed us, just like Lisa jumped out and pushed you guys. And then there's folks that were just talking. They say, hey, there's Troyzanne and Brooke. And I'm like, I don't really care. They're in a canoe. They're not pulling me, so I want to keep these sticks in the ground and try to get somewhere. But you're right. I was doing a lot of community watching as we were on that barge, trying to figure out. But the neat thing was they were already talking as a team. And like John told us later, John Vahada, I haven't called you guys tribes.
Right.
You're a team right now. So I was kind of picking and choosing as well. I did not think we were settled into tribes. I was picking. But what got me kind of funny is once the game started, 9 names were called and 9 names weren't. And I looked at the names that were called, and those are some meaty guys, some big dudes. And then I looked at the names that weren't called. There was tall Mike. He was athletic, but he was a super fan. Then there was Matt, little Matt, who's a super fan. And then there's Bob, who's older than me. And even though I'm still the fat guy of the family, we weren't as strong looking as the other group, and that got me a little worried. Oh, we also had Chris. So we also had Chris, and he was a swimmer and lifeguard,
Which
but
Chris?
still Chris Lord, Chris L.
Okay.
So we had good people, but I was looking at those meaty guys. You got Chris Page, and then you got Jared, and then you got Carl, and then you got Jeff over there. These guys these are some big guys. I'm thinking, are these our tribes? I hope we don't get into a tug of war or something, because I'm not sure how far we're going to work with that. But then it all changed around. But I'm with Wendy. I was listening on the barge. I was listening to all the conversations, trying to figure out who was talking about what, if anybody was talking about alliances, and of course Bob was in the back just pushing the boat, not saying a word.
That to me, see, the thing is, for you guys stepping in, and this is your first go around, if you see somebody listening like that again, you're sticking out just as much as the other ones.
Exactly. I was going to tell him. That's what
we saw that you were listening. We were aware of that.
Yeah.
When we went off, we're like, yeah, Dave's sitting back sucking all this in. Wendy's sitting back sucking all this in. The thing is that Wendy did not exhibit the other side of it, where she was really willing to make those hardcore moves. And again, and Wendy knows this, the huge reason, then we go past this, Matt was kind of tripping after that first night. Wendy was the 6th one down, and then there was Bob, and then there was Dave. When Wendy threw up out there out there camping, she was just she was a little mom that came up. She was like, oh, look at this little mom sitting here sleeping on the ground. Oh, she's so cute. And all of a sudden she looks up and she goes, I don't feel so good. And she gets up and throws up and comes back down and lays on the ground. We're like, okay, this person is good. And then when we did some searching for some idols, and she actually, came up with them. Loyalty goes a long ways. At least with the Doc and I, that was the big thing. And again, Brooke was making some moves. There were so many moves here, guys, that happened. If you look at what happened with Chris Page when he kind of put the Survivors on the same team,
right?
That is also akin, if you remember the first All-Stars, when Boston Rob got Lex to put Amber on a team.
Yes.
And then moved him over later.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah. Brooke started that move. Now, I was tight with Chris P., but Brooke made those moves. So Brooke comes off. She's one of these people, the first time I met her in the camp, I was like, oh, she's solid. But you first meet her, and she's this cute little person. She's a very, very intelligent person.
Very
intelligent. Made moves that were so slight. But when you guys were sitting there, Dave observing, Wendy observing, that was not missed.
Right.
There's a difference to it, and you can tell. You can tell when a person is kind of sitting back and watching, and you had to be careful. There's a lot of observing going on, which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a better move than some of the other people that last night when they were going hardcore at Wendy, which was, Dave, you missed it. My gosh, I've never seen anything like that where she was getting beat on and attacked mercilessly.
They followed me to the bath. I went to go to the bathroom, and everywhere they followed me. And that night, it was funny because the thing I was most nervous about coming into this whole thing was, could I do the challenges? And while I know I wasn't the best at every challenge, I did win a few, so yes, I can do the challenges. But the hardest part for me was that night.
Yeah.
It was the scrambling, and you know, I was debating what I wanted to do, and I really thought about it afterwards. The reason that I stayed where I was, and that people thought, oh, she's this, you know, super fan, she's just following, but it was really more calculated than that for me. And the reason being that I had all these people that were so frantic that they weren't coming, they didn't offer me anything. They were coming, it was very obviously self-centered moves. No one talked to me about Final 2 or Final 3. I felt I 100% would have been on the bottom with that group. I also felt like I was on the bottom with the survivors and Bob. Well, after Bob, I was certainly on the bottom with them, but their method was so calm and so calculated that I could work with that much more than people being frantic.
Right. Well, now you had to take into consideration, Wendy, that the 4 survivors, they had every reason to be calm. They had that tribe in the palm of their hand. The other people were freaked out and didn't think they had a chance in the world, and they were at a desperate moment.
They did that.
But that made them big. That made them.
Let me back up a second. They did that to themselves, and let me show you how. As they went through it, you know, they followed like some sort of a formula. Get rid of the strong players. Get rid of the strong players. Get rid of the strong players. And in the end, they had no diversity in their tribe. Sure, you got a few people that could make a puzzle. Sure, you had a few people that were somewhat loyal. But they got rid of anybody that would bring any strength or speed to the game. And those challenges had a lot of aspects to it. So as they were spinning their group out, they just made our job so much easier. So then in the end, yeah, of course we were in control because we made a plan. We stuck to that plan. As Dave and Wendy can say, we were just preaching all day long, guys. We would win. We'd come back. Make a plan, stick to the plan, work to the plan, and at least our little group had a chance. But they would win, and then they would get rid of like some very, very, you know, valuable players.
Right.
And in the end, I mean, they had, you know, I guess friends that were, you know, trying to laugh at all of Wendy's jokes and kiss her butt that night. But by that time, the game was lost. And you're right, there was no control left. We had control of it, and there's a reason we were calm. But we were calm. When we would go back and have conversations in between the challenges, we weren't yelling and screaming. I think, you know, and everybody worked well together. We did stay calm, but we had control of it from that day before. By the time they started scrambling, they gutted their teams. You know, getting rid of that Carl when they got rid of him, dude was smart, strong as an ox, you know, a decent guy. I couldn't believe they got rid of him. You know, even that Chris P thing, how that happened, that was quite a coup. I wasn't there for that. That must have been quite a...
I don't know, I wish I was there for that tribal.
Quite a shocker. And, you know, it would look like, you know, Troy Zan and I had a lot of conversations. It was just that Doc and I had made our pact, you know, very early on. It was just a good combination of the 4 of us that were very different human beings. When you've got a group and everybody's the same, and again, I wouldn't just say the strongest people you want to get out. Our diversity is what made us calm, and our loyalty. And then, but we were not totally calm. We thought for sure. That's why I played that idol the next day. The Doc for sure. She thought Bob and Wendy had flipped.
Well, I'll tell you what. I knew. I'll tell you when I knew that I made the right decision. It was the day of the individual immunity challenges, and it was the second challenge, which was the gross food eating challenge, because although I did eat everything, I ended up being one of the final 3. So instead of it being a normal tribal council, it was a tribal council where the final 3, one of them got voted out. If I was going to flip, it would have been the vote before that. And then I would have been a flipper, and I would have been, everyone would have voted for me. You guys would not, you would have voted for me and not Lisa. I would have been gone. So at that moment, I didn't know I'd come in first, but I knew I 100% made the right choice for me at that moment.
Right. After you did not flip that first vote, and I played the idol, which I didn't want to. The Doc thought you flipped because you really had it was relentless on top of you. After you didn't vote there, I knew at that point that I was at least in the final 4 because Brooke, the Doc, and myself were tight, and Troy. But those 3 of us, Brooke, the Doc, and myself, were super, super tight. We did not ever imagine that Wendy was going to beat us in that final immunity challenge, which was pretty good. So, and again, also, I'm fine with when, again, just so I can say on the record before it gets too far, I'm absolutely fine with Wendy winning that, because I think after we knocked out Bob, we heard people saying, I don't even want to watch anymore.
I did hear
And
that.
we didn't want to be that big of jerks
Right.
that we came in there. And Troy, Troy was somebody that he didn't think that we'd probably make the moves that we did, but we had to start feeding on ourselves in the end there. But the four that we had, together, once Wendy did not flip, she was there. And she was going to be there. And then I knew we pretty much had it after that.
Well, I can attest to her skill set or her strategy side, because when, like on Friday night, as we sat with you guys listening and talking, and I went for, man, there's so many different strategies that we've already talked about, but at the same time, I've heard people say, well, nobody came to us that wanted to work with us. So I kind of adopted that strategy in a sense, whereas Wendy was part of the conversation. She was very mature. She listened. She got herself involved, talked about kids, talked about things, but as soon as you guys went away, her and I were immediately talking strategy, immediately confirming things, immediately talking things. So she wasn't a fan listening, going, wow, we're talking Survivors. She was like, this is cool, but now what are we going to talk about? So
Right.
we, behind the log, around the warm rocks, as she was exchanging rocks every hour to keep herself warm, we were talking strategy, and we were talking about things. And we even said right away that what are they going to, they're going to either choose Matt and knock us out, or they're going to go with us and drop Matt. However, there's still, Heather and Chris out there and Katie. There's still 6 of us here, and every time we did a challenge on Saturday, and Dr. Jill would ask, who's left? What colors are left?
Yep.
And about the 3rd time I said, Matt, don't answer. Please don't answer, because you're going to keep telling her there's 6 or 5 blues left. Please stop telling her there's so many blues left in the game. And I'll give her credit. Dr. Jill, she zinged me either Friday night or Saturday morning when she asked, are you okay going with us instead of them to the final? And it caught me off guard. And I'm one of those that says, when somebody asks you a question, no matter what, you always say yes. And you say it emphatically, and you say it right away. And she got me good. I'll give her a lot of credit. She's smart.
Oh, yeah.
She was quick, and she set me up, and she knocked me right back down. And I even went to her later. I went to her later and tried to make it up, saying, look, I got to talk to Wendy, I got to talk to Bob, and I didn't want to answer for them, but to give you an answer, yes, we are all 4 going with you guys, which of course we weren't, or I wasn't at the time. But that's why, she got me, and she nailed me, and she was right to get rid of me first, because as if we'd gotten to the merge, if at least Wendy and I had gotten to the merge, first thing I was going to do was to align a new group and try to knock you guys out. So you were right to pick on me.
Yeah.
Well done, and you got me. But at the same time, when the game was over, I ran to Wendy and I said, you made the right selfish moves. I'm so proud of you. You made the moves that got you to the end no matter who you went with. You took care of you first, and that's what Survivor's about. It's about one person winning.
My
Well,
my moment of like being put on the spot was when we got the food tray at the merge. There was a clue in there, and I knew there was a clue in there, and I couldn't get it myself. So Jill was next to me, and good faith, I shared it with Jill. She got the clue. She had presented to me a possible final girls alliance. Well, once her and I shared the clue, and I went to the bathroom and came back, and I saw Joel, you, and her looking, I knew that wasn't true. At that moment, I knew that you two were tighter than her and Brooke. So you guys went one way, I went another way. My favorite moment was I found the 3rd clue or the 2nd clue, and then I made a stupid rookie mistake, and Joel knows exactly what it is. I left the box in the tree. So I had like 15 minutes, and I was like 1 tree literally away from finding the idol, which I don't know if it would have changed what I did because I won.
It probably would have killed you.
Yeah, it might have. But you guys came, and something's happened, and I had 1 split second, and I just said, I just found the clue and shared it. And, it was 100% the right thing, but it was like, David, it was that split-second decision of what do I do, and I just had to be honest about it.
Let me back this up. When we did not get out Lisa, and we got that Tina first,
Yeah.
the reason we didn't do that was to flush out that idol.
Yeah.
If we would have not found that idol with you that night, we wouldn't have said much to you. We would have flushed out that idol the very first vote the next day,
Right.
and you would have been the 2nd person gone. And because you've got to have a plan, and you've got to be merciless.
Yeah.
And at first we were kind of like, because we saw that empty box, and Dr. Jill, she is nobody to be trifled with. I'll tell you that, man. When
Yeah,
she
she
saw
is
that,
smart.
she made a beeline to Wendy. And she came across Wendy, and I was kind of standing back, and she was just right out. And Wendy came through, and I could see that. I could see in your eyes a little bit.
It was like a 1 second, what the heck do I do about
Yes, I saw it. I could see it in your eyes. And I'm like, okay, she gave it over. Let's see if you can give it over, and then we'll go from there. But, yeah, if we wouldn't have found it, we would have flushed it the next morning. And, you know, we had idols to play on our side. And so it was a good move. I mean, you can't – it is a devious game, but many times it is somebody that makes the solid move that keeps you around. It was Matt that did it to himself. Yeah. And he was there. He had it. We loved him. We loved his story. When he put that puzzle together and we picked him up in the air, I was choking up. I mean, that's something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And we had it. And then he got too smart. It was the same thing that happened with the Bagong tribe with ours. We got a little comfortable, and all of a sudden everybody wants to do their own thing, and the wheels fall off.
But, but sometimes being smart is being the person who keeps their mouth shut.
And and sticks to it. I mean, Wendy, you know, when that happened, that's because it came down between Bob and you, and Jill was like, we got to keep her around. She did hook us up with this. She did help us with this. She did these things. And I'm like, all right, that's what's going to happen then. Yeah. And, you know, it was something that it was your loyalty that kept it around. It was your loyalty. It was your toughness that kept you on that first time when you threw up and you didn't quit. We knew you'd be there. And I was very impressed with that. And then, you know, when you actually did come up with it, because if you wouldn't have, I mean, we flushed out the other people the next day. You know, there was a lot of people left. But we thought that you probably, you know, that's why she played the idol. But, I mean, that's the beautiful part of the game. I mean, there's so many levels to it. There's no one thing that can happen. It's just a million different things that could happen that could change it. And, you know, here's a question I have. So, you know, we had our thoughts of we had in control, Dave. When you went back and you got out, I think it was right. You were right before the merge, right? I mean, you were two before the merge, right?
Yeah, me and Matt, yeah.
I mean, what was the mindset? Was there a lot of animosity? There was a trash talking towards us about how hard we were playing, getting mad out? Was there a lot of angst? I mean, was there anger, or what was your thought? What was going on?
No, when I got out, for one, I wasn't hungry. Crazy enough. What's neat is that all that we're talking about happened over 3 days, people. So if you're thinking about doing this, you will get a full dose of Survivor just over these. We haven't even touched on the challenges yet. But anyway, when I got out, I found Chris P. and I found Carl and I found those guys and I found Mike, and we started hanging around and talking, and we're sitting there astonished at the number of fans that are not ganging up on the Survivors, and we're just not seeing it. Of course, we don't know Jill's idol stockpile. You know, we don't know all the power she has behind that, but we're looking at them like, and we're saying, why is it Wendy flipping? Why is it Bob flipping? You know, why are they making these decisions? Of course, at the end of the Sunday, we understood why, but you know, we can't figure out why these 4 people are running this game against these other 7 or 8. There wasn't so much trash talking because I was actually flattered that y'all picked me to go first because it means you didn't trust me and you were right to do that. But at the same time, we were still looking at the fans going, what are they waiting for? You know, why only one Survivor can win an immunity challenge? What are they waiting for to go after all these people? So,
well, I didn't feel like with the configuration of the people that came to the merge, there were some people that I had not played with before, and there was some people that I did not trust. So I honestly, even though I ended up sticking with the Survivors, I felt in a better situation with them than I did with the other group, except for the 2 original Blues, you know, Chris and Heather. But there was 3 other people there, and I didn't trust them.
I would imagine it's hard to suddenly trust somebody on the last day of a game. You know, at the last stage 4, you call it in 4 stages. Go to stage 4 and suddenly make an alliance when you've been living with these others in stage 3 and some of stage 2. You went all these challenges with these people. You spent nights with these 2 nights with the Survivors. You've made alliances with them. You made relationships with them. You shared idol clues with them.
And when the first thing they say to you is, you're going to be happy with 6th, not, you know, the first word you've talked in a game, you're sort of like, yeah.
Well, Joel, also, go ahead.
We dominated that day as a group, and I kept on reiterating that night. We won by sticking to a plan. Let's stick to the plan, because these other ones, they didn't have a plan. And they were just shooting from the hip and going off, and two of them were sleeping over there. And then all of a sudden they're coming up with some crazy ideas, like right in front of us, as blatant as possible. The wheels would have fell off that whole thing the next day. I don't blame Wendy and Bob for sticking with the four of us, because at least, you know, we could spend, you know, get through that. You know, it was such a, and again, that's the difference of going through it before and then, you know, coming into the first time and all of a sudden you're just going off with it. It just reminded me a lot of my first tribe that I was on, and there was no, it was just everybody out for everybody, because they weren't one tribe. They spent the day on two separate tribes, and they're a hodgepodge that got put together in the last minute, and they didn't have the benefit of us spending the whole day talking back and forth. And again, you know, even though the four survivors, everybody puts us as four survivors, we were vastly different human beings with different skill sets that brought different things to the table. And when we put ourselves together as one, we were very formidable. And also, we put that shit on lockdown. Sorry for swearing. But that's another thing with Jervis. When Jervis went back his second time and we talked so much about it, him and Tyson put that whole thing on lockdown. And you've got to do it as well as possible. You can't do it 100%. But for Wendy and them to come in and Bob to come in, they just had to kind of chill that next day. We had the numbers, let's eliminate them and go from there. It was the right move in the end for Wendy, because we did make another move past that to get rid of Troyzan, who I feel bad about. I love him. I love Brooke. You know, but, you know, because there was a cohesion to it. But I'm sorry for interrupting your question there. But.
No, but so, you brought up a good point. Let me finish one last thing that he asked about trash talking, Dwaine. I know you're still here, Dwaine. Sorry. We'll be right with you. But he talked about when I got knocked out, was there trash talking? If anything, we went looking for Chris, because we wanted to tell Chris, this is your work right here. This is what you did. Explain to us why you're buying us dinner tonight, because you've just set these four. You've forced them to bond. You know, they have a common core in that they're returnees, you know, and they know that everybody's out to get them. But you put them together and made them strong. You gave them 24 hours to regroup and form and lock it down, like you said. So that was one of the things we were talking about up on the hill, about looking for Chris. And Chris was there. He was talking. He was just as cordial as anything, and he was explaining some things. But by that time, it was just, let's just watch and enjoy. You know, there was nothing harsh about it, nothing bad about it. We wanted to see how it was all going to work out, because we thought it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, we wanted to play hard, so.
Chris wanted to make a big splash in the game. And what I was going to tell you, David actually said. The players, Joel, were more irritated with Crispy than they were with anything else. Why did Chris take these tribes and stack a tribe full of survivors who had played and dominated a whole day together, which we're about to go back and talk about? Why would he do that? And that's what was more frustrating. And when we did confessionals that night, after Chris made that move, what Chris did, everybody, is we had a reverse tribe, a reverse schoolyard pick, and Brooke looked over at Chris, who was picking teams for the other players, and said, "Put me with Joel." And then Chris looked over at Joel and said, "I'll give you her if you give me who I want." And they basically made a deal, and they stacked each other's teams, right? Which left
and that's Survivor.
Right, exactly. But they were all pretty upset with Chris for that, because he basically
I understand why Chris did it. I understand why he did it. The reason he would want to do it is he would have us beat the crap out of everybody. He would be left in the end, and then he would take your spot, Wendy.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen.
That's what he probably thought was going to happen. But he didn't see that he was going to be the second one out. And that's the thing about Survivor. Anything can happen at any time.
Right.
Like what happened in the final immunity challenge when Wendy won and took the whole thing. Anything can happen at any time.
Right.
And I think that was Chris's thinking, because Chris and I, you know, were friends, and it's just like, again, it's just like the Lex, that Rob. I mean, those things happen in Survivor. Right. People make looks at each other, and they do things like that. And that was Brooke, her very slick move that I didn't let any, you know, we looked at each other throughout the game, you know, that we never let on because we didn't need any more animosity towards Brooke, but that was Brooke. Brooke is highly intelligent and very slick and just the littlest moves. I mean, she's real good. And so she started that off, and then we just went through, and I said, okay, give me the doc. Okay, give me Troyzan. And then at that point, we didn't want to push it any farther, and we kind of unfortunately had to let Jamie and Nina go. We couldn't be that stupid about it and so blatant about it that we would go for all of them. And I just let it go at that. I said, do what you want after that. Because once we had our 4, those 4 to me, and I say this without any joke, if you put the 4 of us together, being as different as we are as different human beings as we are. Once you put the 4 of us together, I think we could have been in the Final 4 in any Survivor show that there was, because we are so different. Diversity is the key. Diversity was the key. But Chris P was thinking, put those 4 together, pound them into the ground, and that's what we did. We didn't think Matt was. Then they were trying to mess with us. You know, when they gave us that little old lady named that little lady right there named Wendy with the tent? Yeah, give them her.
The 5
I
foot
never
tall.
thought in a million years. I never thought in a million years when I saw that little Wendy that was the person that we were getting. You cannot tell a book by its cover, and Wendy and Matt are the best cases of that. Matt became the most dangerous person in that game. He had to go. Wendy, she just beat us.
Yeah.
But the thing is with Chris that still astounds me is he didn't have any self-perception at that point, because there's a time for a big, huge move, but that, you know, you can say what you want, but he jeopardized his own game with that move.
He did.
That's absolutely correct. Survivor is not all, like they asked that question and I think Jeff said, what's your big move? The big move was 20 moves.
Right.
One big move is not Survivor. I mean, what's your big blindside? You don't blindside before the merge. You blindside when we got Troy, which, again, I'm sorry, Troy, but that's when you do it. You don't do it before that. And I've had, again, 15 years to sit there and beat myself up over this, and I went out there. I had a very, very specific plan that was going to be worked. And, you know, thanks, Chris P., for doing that. But it's just make a plan, stick to the plan. You know, Wendy not flipping like you did. Those things are key, and you can look at how that works out. And if you ever get a chance to play the game for real, that's what you do. You don't go willy-nilly, and that's just in life too, right, guys? I mean, you don't just, you know, all of a sudden like, you know what, maybe I won't go to work this week. You don't just throw all your plans out the window and do what you're going to do, because the results are going to pretty much be there. Everything's going to fall apart. So Bob and Wendy, you were right there. Matt is a perfect example. Matt was there. Matt was solid. Oh, we started thinking, was Matt some sort of a super sleeper? You know, kind of falling off that canoe on purpose, and then all of a sudden he's grabbing that idol, and all of a sudden he's, you know, I'm like, is this guy, and he's super puzzle guy. I'm thinking, is this guy like the ultimate survivor sleeper guy that we've never heard of? So I was scared at that point. But it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if we never lost any challenges and we went into the MERV with a total 8 of us.
Yeah,
it might have been, we would have been worse off.
Yeah.
But that's why we blew that challenge. I mean,
go ahead, Joel. That's why you threw the challenge to get rid of Matt.
Yeah, that's why we had to throw it. And I am not a fan of it. And the whole rumor was for years that my team Pagong threw the last challenge to get rid of me before the merge. And I was always very much against it. And here I found myself in the exact position that I was going up to Brooke and the doctor, and we all agreed that if we got to stand there for 35 minutes and you make an idiot of yourself dropping that ball, doctor, you are the strongest person in the world for doing that. There was no way we could allow Matt to go into that merge with us. It would have been a completely different game, and it would have turned out completely different.
So was that the only one you threw, or just that one?
That was the only one. The challenge, I'd say, when we lost the fire one, when you went out, Dave, I would say that's a flaw in the challenge. I wasn't in a hurry to light the fire because they probably had a good 10-15 minutes before those buckets were going to move.
That's what I thought too.
He just built such a high fire, it was able to cut that string before the buckets moved.
Right.
So kudos to Lisa, because that's what you do. You just kick butt, and, you know, like those pins not fitting in that cart. Pound them, do whatever you got to do. You do whatever you got to do to win. You don't wait around and ask. You just do it, and that's that Lisa had that mentality, and that's what she did. Yeah.
Well, I wonder, Troyzan had a really good point Saturday morning when we started winning. and he said we won that first challenge, the boat challenge, probably one of my favorite challenges, getting that cart around the world through the water.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And they didn't even get off the pitch because their pins were so hard to get in. But besides that, when we walked away from there, he said, "You watch, they're going to start scrambling. You lose one challenge, you go down one player. As soon as you see teams sit out people, you start scrambling." And it was actually hard for me to watch my friends vote each other out, even the ones that weren't just Tawadi. I had friends on other tribes, and challenge after challenge after challenge, we're walking out confident, high-fiving. They're standing there waiting for tribal. And then we come to the next challenge, and all we're thinking about is who's going to do what, who's going to chase that, who's going to dig this, and they're thinking who they're going to vote out when they lose the next challenge. And Troy Zane kept saying it's such a mental thing on them. We got to keep solid, like you were saying.
Yes.
Keep the plan, stick to it. And this makes me wonder, going into Saturday night, how these other fans were feeling. I've been talking to Chris Lord online and about the frantic thing about being talked about, and it's like, well, I mean, they just voted out 6 people, especially Chris and Heather. They got down to 2. I was about to cry my eyes out if they had lost that ball challenge. I'm glad y'all threw it, because Chris and Heather were working their backsides off trying to get that ball back and forth, and when they finished second, it was like just this wave of relief because they didn't have to do a fire challenge or something to send them home. But what a mental breakdown to go through all day on Saturday and then be so desperate Saturday night. I can see where it felt frantic. Were all of them frantic, Wendy, or was it just a few? Or
everyone was frantic except Tina, who was a lovely, lovely woman, but was very, very quiet. And I felt bad. Heather and Chris were my original. Well, with you, Dave, they were our original 4 alliance. Mentally, one thing I realized that I could do is just block it out, because I couldn't get. I felt bad. I mean, I'm the person who cries at a McDonald's commercial, but when you have to be tough, you kind of have to be, and I had to block it out. But I mean, Jeff came up to me, Lisa came up to me, everyone came up to me, but Heather was maybe the least frantic of that group, but they were, and I totally felt for it. I mean, we were all able, even though unfortunately you left, and you were kind of if you and I had made it together, I would have had someone to bounce more ideas off of. But
Joe would have been the first one gone. Anyway, go ahead.
He'd been out. But I feel like it was hard. I felt bad. I did, because we were able to be calm most of the day, and
nobody had a chance because we had those idols. And we flushed them on Tina that next morning. What we looked at right away when we got back to the camp when they were beating on you, Tina wasn't doing anything.
No.
So we knew that they were never going to give Tina an idol to hold.
Right.
And if anybody was going to have an idol, it was Lisa. Mm-hmm. Lisa was making moves, and also none of those teams could really tell. I think the crowd could tell that we were throwing that challenge, but those other teams were trying so hard to get past that they didn't even notice that we were trying to throw it. So they came in with such confidence. Lisa came into that merge with such confidence. They thought they just won 2 in a row. So if anybody was going to be holding an idol that next morning, it would have been Lisa. So we were kind of protected that way. So we flushed it on Tina. Lisa started crying because the first 2 votes read were for Lisa. She thought she was gone. She wasn't crying for Tina. She thought she was about to be gone, and she didn't play it. After that, we figured we'd be okay. But, they didn't have any sort of, all right, I mean, you're right, Dave. They were scrambling. Instead of making plans to win the next challenge, they started hedging their bets on how I'm going to stop it for myself getting voted out when I lose the next challenge.
Right.
And that was the mentality that they got in their head. And once you start thinking of what am I going to do when I lose instead of how am I going to win, it's over.
Right. Well, and the other thing is when they came to me, I had a really long talk with Andy Baker after when everything was finished. There's also strategy in the way you can present that to another person, and there was nothing of value that was presented to me. Even if any of them had come up and made small talk, like, well, what was it like last night hanging out with the 4 survivors? If they had done anything that was sort of I think one approach that I took was a very personal approach, and I genuinely am that kind of person. So I want to know about your son or someone's kids or what their life is like, but they didn't see that as valuable at all. And I think that not coming at all from a personal stand, it was much easier for me to keep my distance.
We were going to laugh. Jill and I went for a walk, and we were laughing because they had you cornered by the fire. And they actually had Wendy in the middle and 2 of them on each side. and they're laughing at every joke that Wendy said, all different like this, and we were just laughing. I'm like, let me tell you something. If that Wendy can withstand this right now, she can withstand anything.
They brought me a stick to brush my teeth.
That's right. That's right. That's right. They're like, here, can we get you that? And they actually made her stick to brush her teeth, and they're like helping her out. And can we fluff your pillow? I mean, it was just. But right, they didn't offer anything other than BS.
Yeah.
And then you had the two guys sleeping over there. You had the girl from area, Tina. She just was just kind of happy to be, which I can't stress enough. At the end, when I said she's a wonderful person, she's a wonderfully nice person.
Yeah.
She's a fabulously nice person. But Lisa was the biggest threat. She had to go, but I mean, we had a pretty good handle on it. But it was that first vote that we were going to see: is Wendy for real, or is Wendy going to be an issue at this point? And you know, Bob was just a great man. Bob was just a super great man. And that's another thing too. In the actual television show Survivor, you're not going to get somebody like Bob because he's just too good of a guy.
Yeah.
You know, he just wouldn't be there. So.
All right. So I have a comment, a question, and then I want to handle the first half of the show because this first hour has been the whole last half and how y'all killed everybody, right? So now I want to get to what was this weekend like. But so I want to say one thing first is, Joel, I think this season of Durham Warriors Survival Challenge is going to be a turn in the way the game is played. In the first two seasons, the survivors were kind of there. They were, oh, we love you, and the survivors were kind of like, all right, well, y'all go ahead and have your fun. We're going to get voted out. Maybe they weren't all like that, but that was kind of the mentality. I love what you said in a confessional. These people paid good money for this charity to experience Survivor. I'm going to give it to them. And you played your butt off, and so did the rest of the survivors. It wasn't, we're just here to help them have a good time. It was, I'm here to win the game.
No, I'm busy. I got things going on.
Right.
And if I were to take time out of my, car, and I, at first when this came up, I'm not interested in playing, backyard egg toss. Right. I would rather not do that. So when this came up, Car's like, you know what, I think you should do this. So I said, we're going to go out there and do this. And then that's when I really thought about it. I'm like, okay, I've had a lot of years to think about this. I don't go to a lot of Survivor things. Big Mike will tell you I just gone to a couple little things. So I've had a lot of years to think about it. And I was like, we're going to do this. And then when I teamed up, when I saw the other people that were there, which I did not expect, I just thought there was going to be like one other person. I'm going to go all out.
Right.
And we're just going to punch him in the face.
That's right.
And keep punching him in the face all day long. And also, these little people we're playing against weren't little people we're playing against.
Right.
I mean, that Jared guy, he started running his mouth right away.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that makes it even better. So, there was, and again, once you get down to it, that's only one aspect of it. It's every single level of it. Blindsiding Matt, all those things. That is what it is. I mean, that's why this game is the toughest game in the world. And then in the end, all of our plans went to crap anyways. So, it is the best game there is, and there's only so many times you're going to get to play it as raw as what it was. But to me, what's the point of going out there? Because I'm busy. If we're just going to go out there and we're going to play backyard egg toss,
right.
And I did not expect the whole setup to be as elaborate as this. I kind of had an idea, but once we started really getting into it, and again, that's Troyzan, that's Brooke, that's the doctor. Again, I can't just say enough about that team of people that were with us. The four of us. Jamie's a nice guy. When he kind of fell out of that canoe that first time, I kind of pulled him aside and I said, let's not be doing that anymore. Let's not be playing around, because that Jared was ripping that kayak out of the water and almost broke a couple of our legs standing there. It was a serious thing.
Yeah.
It was absolutely for all of us as well. Now, it's not just the people that are competing against us. I'll tell you this: since we've gotten back, the group of survivors, we're also saying that this is one of the best times we've ever had of our lives as well.
See, awesome. Durham Warriors Survival Challenge. So, Joel, my question I have before we get back to the first half of the show and you kind of tweaked my interest. You didn't throw the challenge to get rid of David, all right?
No.
So but you got David out. Why, if Matt was such a threat, and you weren't planning on throwing that, why did you get David out before Matt?
Because, so this is how it worked. Matt was supposed to be in the 4 of us and Matt. That was how it was going to be. We negotiated that with Matt when we all went into the tent the night before. We had Brooke pull him aside, or not Brooke, Doctor pull him aside, and that's just how it was going to go. Well, then he screwed up and he kind of went rogue on that one plan where we said, hey, this is just a turn-based game. Don't go for the idols. Don't get suckered in on taking it out of the box. And he kind of went rogue on us. Okay. And then Jill and I and everybody talked, and we're like, we got to get that idol out of his hand as soon as possible. So then that goes that way. Well, then, luckily, we did lose. And we said, David's out. And we told Matt, David's out. He's gone. He's got to go now. I mean, if we're going to get rid of anybody, there's a time to get rid of him. He's got to go. And he went rogue again.
Okay, so it was the first strike.
No. You're right. That was the second one, and I was done.
Okay.
I was like,
all right.
I don't care what happens. We are not winning another challenge until Matt's gone.
So
Okay.
if you'd lost the challenge, like if we hadn't lost the challenge, the fire making, if we'd won it and had one challenge left, would you have thrown it to get rid of me or Matt, or what would you have done?
No, we would have gone into it because we would have decimated those other people. They would have just been completely gone anyways.
Yeah.
So, and we were pretty solid. You know, it would have mattered to see what happens with Bob and Wendy. We had a pretty good amount of immunity idols. We had a few immunity idols, you know, in our stash. You know, I probably would have taken one right away, and you guys would have tried to vote me out that next morning, and probably would have burned a couple of you through. We were pretty good. I was fine. Again, coming into it, I really truly meant that when I said I want to take our group over the line, the first finish line, because that's the first finish line. And then once you get down to the final 6 of us, that's the second finish line. And then the last finish line, you know, or the goal, let's say, is that final 3. And that's when it gets real bloody and nasty and dirty and hurt feelings happen. So there was multiple stages that I was looking at to get to. So, yeah, when we said that all that day and we were all sitting there that day, I wanted us all 8 to get over. Because once all 8 of us got over, then we would go from that point. And then, you know, then it is everybody's game.
Yeah.
But the 4 of us were pretty tight. And, you know, with the idols playing, and we could probably flush them out and use some really good technique in there.
Right.
And, again, don't forget that, you know, Brooke and the Doctor were pretty darn smart. They'll come up with something.
Yeah. All right, so everybody that is listening or watching, you've been listening to us talk about the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge, and you're going, what is all this about? We had this 4-day game, and what we've been talking about is basically the last half of the game, because these 3 that are with me were on the same tribe for most of that, and so naturally they're going to talk about that. And we also talked about how Wendy won and things like that, and how all that worked. But what I want to talk about now is how the game started and how it progressed for the fans. So while the Survivor alums, or the favorites, were in their tribe camp, okay, so they're by themselves at their camp, the fans have no idea, other than the couple that saw Troyzan and somebody, but they didn't know how many or what was going on. All 18 of these fans end up on the island in 2 different groups, as David's already told you, and then we walk them to a camp, all 18 together. We make them stand in the groups that they came in, still not calling them tribes, and told them, here's a bucket, or, well, there was a bucket with water in it, but here's a pot, here's some flint, here's some rice, we'll see you in the morning. All right?
Yep.
And we left. Okay. So, very fascinating, very fascinating. I was walking around camp with my camera, and they all gathered around the fire, and they just had a big campfire night. Now, David, one thing I noticed that you said, and before we get to the part where we surprised you, right, Joe, I don't know if you even know all of this stuff. So
I know nothing. I know none of it.
So you're going to enjoy some of this. David and Wendy, before we get to the part where we came back to camp later that night and totally surprised you guys, all right, David, you were talking about how you just sat back and listened, and Wendy, you said the same thing. When I went and listened to some of the confessionals that they were doing when they were pulling y'all away, they were mentioning that. Just like Joel said earlier, sometimes being quiet isn't the smartest thing. You've got to have that balance, because a couple of them said, that a big guy, he's just, I don't know, he's listening, and I'm thinking he might be someone that we need to worry about.
Hey,
So
Joel calls me big guy, not you. Just Joel calls me big guy. But anyway,
I didn't call you big guy. The fans called you big guy.
I know, but on that night, to me, that night was what I call the meet and greet. Yeah. And by the end of the night, I had everybody's name and everybody's state where they were from. I immediately looked for Wendy. I wanted to find the other Virginia girl, but for the most part, it was a meet and greet thing. But in that sense, and I think Wendy will agree, there were some over aggressive conversationalists that if you interrupted them, that would be a mark against you.
Right.
So yeah, I did listen. I did try to observe. I did look and see who was sitting together, who was having quick, short conversations, and things like that. So yeah, I did. I probably did listen more than I spoke, but at the same time, I just didn't think we were in tribes.
Right.
I didn't want to show my hand. I didn't want to make any real alliances. I wanted to make connections. I wanted people to know my name. I wanted Benji, Jared to know my name. I wanted Carl to know my name.
Right.
I wanted different people. I wanted Candace to know my name. But go ahead, Wendy.
And that night for me, I felt like I was pretty chatty that night actually, but I was really chatty on a personal level. I agree. At that point, we didn't know how. I was 99% sure that we were not going to be divided by the raft that we came in, those two groups. I was pretty sure that we were going to be three, and my gut was there was going to be one returning survivor for each tribe, which obviously didn't happen. But so I was really talking personally with people and trying to make a personal connection. What I was overhearing was a lot of bravado from really super fans about how many times they'd applied and which person got a 10-page packet and which person got the 40-page packet and almost made it. And it was those things I was listening to and thinking, okay, you're going to start crashing and burning here. Yeah. I'm not going to mention that I have never applied for the show. I love the show. And maybe I will now, but I'd never. And so I'm listening, and it was sort of, well, I've done this, and I've done this.
Yeah.
And so I was talking, but I was also listening to that.
Right. There was a lot of who brought the bigger stick.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of that was going on.
Yeah, even Andy Baker.
You don't want the biggest stick here.
Andy Baker even called us out for being too congenial that night. And whereas I didn't have a problem with the congeniality because I was letting it happen. I wasn't going to stop and say, hey, we need to start talking Survivor the game, not Survivor the fan show. We need. I wasn't going to start doing that. Like Wendy said, I was not. I didn't think we were on tribes yet either. I figured it would happen in the morning. We would start picking in the morning.
We didn't talk in our group any strategy at all, period. We had no idea what we were going to do. We just wanted to make it through the night and see what happened the next day. And we talked a little bit saying, you know what, they're going to split us up. We know they're going to split us up.
Right.
And we thought they were going to split us up. We had no idea what you guys were doing. We heard drums. So they just threw us out. We were really in a tight spot way out in the woods. We had no idea what it was going to do. And you really can't talk any sort of survivor strategy when you don't know what the heck is going to go on.
That's right. That's right.
And the most important thing is to do exactly what you did, is talk about life.
Yes.
And who you are, and that's just what you do anyways.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that you guys did anything wrong by sitting there and listening. I think that is the best way to go. It's just that Dave, you can see on Dave's face when wheels are turning behind his eyeballs. And that was the thing that I saw. I could see because he was real quiet and real smart. I'm like, oh, this dude's smart. He's gonna get out of here. So
I'm glad you got my notes because you're reading them all perfectly well.
He must have gotten his check in the mail too.
Yeah. I mean, but we all agreed on that. I mean, and there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can't. I don't think anybody. And again, just what everything I had to deal with for 15 years of, the first question is how long did you last? There are so many variables that come into play in this game that, a great person could go quick or a not so great person could last or whatever the situation is. That's why it's the best game.
That's right.
I mean, it's absolutely unpredictable. Us making the moves that we did, but, you guys, we had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to see. Is it 2 tribes? Is it 3 tribes? Are they going to split us up into 2? What was going to happen? what did you guys? Well, keep on. I don't want to ask the next question, but what did you guys think when all of a sudden it was the fan versus favorite thing?
Oh well, let's get there because that's
Okay.
going to happen on the next morning.
Okay.
Okay.
So Andy Baker comes up to me and goes, "Wait till you see this." All right, and we go to camp. So y'all are around the camp trying to start the fire.
We just gotten a little bit started. It was
Yeah, you just started it
like 2 hours
miraculously
later. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
somebody
Exactly.
snuck in a match, and
Yep.
you
I
started
heard
a fire.
about that.
Yeah, so you get a fire started. So Andy goes, "Watch this." Y'all, they blindfolded every single contestant and took them out in the woods 2 by 2. I don't know what they did after that. So which one of y'all wants to explain how these 3
I'll tell you.
tribes were? Okay, thank you,
tell you.
Wendy.
So they blindfold us, sit us on a rock, or I was on a rock, and they tell you to keep your blindfolds on until the drum stops. And so that's the drums that you heard.
Okay.
The drums were on for quite a while. When the drum stops, they hand you a clue that said something to the effect of make it to the fire, which wasn't where our campfire was. It was someplace in the woods that we had to find. And gather yourselves in groups of 3 guys and 3 girls. And the first group of 6 that gets there wins a reward for the night, which was the tent.
And
But,
what time did this take place?
I have no idea.
It was about 8:30.
Okay.
It was
So-
dark.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
dark. So we
yeah.
made it to the fire, and I was the last person of the 6, I think.
No,
Dave,
I
you
was
were
the
already
last.
there.
No,
You
I
were-
was the
okay.
last because they said we need one more. Well, you might have been, but they said we need one more guy. I heard that
Okay.
from a distance.
Okay, so I was the last girl, and you were the last guy, and we just happened to be the first 6 people there. So we were on the Naughty Tawati tribe after that. So, and that's how the tribes. So the tribes, we had thought it would be the next morning, but that night, tribes were divided, and just to make it a little more awkward, we get a tent and no one else does, but we're still all in this big space.
Right.
Oh, so they
So
split up tribes and everybody stayed around each other.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Well,
we had the tent while everyone else was outside.
So as
Right.
much as of a reward as that was to have a tent to stay out of the moisture and out of the weather, I think it was a detriment
Yeah.
because it separated us from the rest of the people. There was 2 tribes out there sleeping around the fire, where one tribe was inside their reward, not communicating, not conversing with those 12 people out there.
Right.
So that's why we were only in there for maybe an hour. Nobody
Yeah.
went to sleep except for Bob, who was on the outside, bless his heart, didn't
Right.
want to wake us up, but he still woke everybody up with his snoring.
Right.
So after about an hour, we're talking and we're talking, and we're like, okay, they're quiet. 5 minutes later, they're talking again out there, and like, okay, we need to go outside one at a time and spread out or do what we can. Don't be obvious. You go to the bathroom, I'll follow, do this. We got to get out of the tent. We can't stay in here secluded because we're only 6 and there's 12 out there.
That's
We don't know what's going to happen with survivors tomorrow. Right now it's 6 against 12, and we're in a bad spot. So this tent is actually hurting us. So gradually, it was probably 2 a.m., and we got up and went outside and just start sitting around the fire, warming our feet back up, and just conversing from there.
Right.
That said, though, I will say that I was so happy that just randomly the 6 of us that got together, because for me, even though it was wonderful on the second day of challenges to win everything, and obviously I got to the end, but I was sort of being told what to do that second day in the challenges. In our first grouping together, we worked really well together, and we worked really hard, and it was so rewarding. We came in second against the survivors. We came in first one time, and I really felt like our group of 6 didn't have any of those big personalities. I mean, we're all a big personality in our own way, but not a real aggressive personality. So I felt like that little bit of time in the tent was not a bad thing, but we needed to get out of there pretty quickly.
But that's a great point because we didn't have any of those alphas that we had heard. We had Chris and Heather, and then we had Bob and Katie. And you're right that I thought we were a really good blend, and what an accomplishment we felt. We were so happy at the end of Friday to have finished second. To 6 survivors. We were like, okay, can we just be taken away now to our camp because we got our beans, we got our rice, our pot, our flint, and we want to go have a buffet.
Right.
And I don't even know if we were the first, but we had rice at lunch that day. We had the 90-minute break, and we made a fire by ourselves without a match, and we had rice for lunch. So that was really, as someone who loves the game, was awesome.
Yeah. So what I loved about that was y'all aren't just blindfold. Y'all are far away from each other, and you have no idea where anybody else is. So the whole dynamics of okay, I know I want this person, but I don't know where they are, and I don't want to get left behind, and just the stress level of doing tribes like that. Bravo to Andy Baker and all of production for coming up with that very good way of doing it.
Yeah,
And
'cause
and let me say this: there was one guy, and I don't know who it was, who was standing by a fire by himself, and some people came up, and he goes, do y'all need a guy? Which they obviously did, and they went, no, that's okay, and they went on and found somebody else. So you know, I mean,
Poor guy.
yeah, so you had those kind of dynamics going. Just kudos to the production team and for the planning team. A great way to come up with the 3 tribes.
They walked us out. We all had numbered. Mine was 16. I stood by a tree that had 16 by it, and then they put the blindfold on, like you said, and I couldn't even see with the top of the fire, so I knew I wasn't going to get back in the first group. But then and there's no light, there's no path, there's just branches everywhere. So I start making my way to the fire, figuring I'm going to try and pick my second or third tribe to see who I want to be with. And here comes Lisa barreling past me. I said, well, she's blazing a path. I'm just going to get behind her and follow her. And sure enough, that's when I heard we need a guy. And I saw first things I saw were Heather and Chris, 2 people that I'd already talked to and wanted to work with. And I just jumped past around the fire, and I was in that group. And I think we were 6 at that point. So that was incredibly awesome, and it worked out great for me.
And as far as socializing, we had all talked to each other before that point.
Yeah.
All of us had.
Yeah.
And so then, Joel, what is interesting is they were 3 tribes, but for the next 2 or 3 hours, they all sat around the campfire and they all talked. And what I noticed was Bob had absolutely no desire to talk with anybody. He sat on the outside of the circle and just watched and occasionally put stuff in. Matt tried to get in the circle, but was not welcomed in the circle. And he would try to get conversation started with the people right around him, and they were obviously distracted, and they would be like, yeah, okay, and then they go back to the circle in the middle. So Matt was an outcast not because he wanted to be, and Bob was an outcast because he wanted to be. What a turnaround for Matt. He went from becoming the one that people really didn't want to hang with, and he wasn't really in with the conversation, to the one that the crowd booed when you voted him off.
Well, we saw that, and again, with the strategy was, have our group, and then align with the people that were having a hard time getting into the group.
Right.
Wendy wasn't in that. Wendy was put with us.
Right.
But we saw that with Matt and Bob.
Yeah.
And that's why we aligned with Matt and Bob right away over Wendy and Dave, because Wendy and Dave did not have that issue.
Right.
And that was our plan, absolutely. We saw that, and we knew that those were people that probably did not align with everybody else.
Right.
Matt did it to himself. Bob stayed true to exactly who he was the whole time.
Right.
So, right, when Matt came out of his shell, it was his undoing.
Yeah. All right, so the next morning, everybody gets up. It's time for challenges, and the 3 fan tribes come out to the drum and everything. Way to go, Lou Otto, for playing the drums. You did a great job.
Before you get there,
all right.
I'm going to give Benji/Jared credit, because I think it was late Thursday night, early Friday morning. He said, Dave, out of the side of his mouth, because that's how he talks when he wants to talk in private. He says, Dave, what if they give them their own tribe? I said, you got to be kidding. No way. Not going to happen. Just kind of carry on the conversation. So Jared, that was one of his guesses. I don't know if it was his or not, but I'll give him credit. He saw the possibility of that coming.
Yeah.
I never thought that would happen.
That's exactly what happened. So we are about to face a full day of full-on, very difficult physical and mental challenges all day long, right? So they have the 3 fan tribes, and then out come the Survivor alums, the Survivor favorites, one by one, and they stand them with your tribes. But they give them a bag. And then they all open their bag, and voila, they're a 4th tribe. And the rest of that day was Survivor Tribe Annihilation Day at Durham Warrior Survival Challenge.
They didn't win every challenge. They won all but 2, because we won 1 and Maz won 1.
Yeah. We lost the Survivor trivia, which was
that's right.
Yeah.
And
we won the ball toss one.
That's right.
And the ball toss.
Yeah.
It was very simple that, and again, going through it. Not everybody. You do need a leader, or one voice speaking, and I just have a loud voice. But everybody, when you sit there and you have a group like we had, I mean, when you have Brooke talking and you have the doc talking and you have Troy Zan talking, they're going to say stuff that's valuable. And we really did just gel well. And there were some big dudes. We were not the strongest guys.
Right.
I mean, I would have to say that Carl and Jared, those two are the two strongest dudes out there.
I learned something from both days, because on that first day when it was our blue tribe and you were a separate tribe, I had to separate out. I felt like I was competing against the other two newbie tribes. That's how I was looking at it. So I was feeling like you guys were gonna take us, but I was really proud of how our blue tribe did, especially because we didn't have some of the strong guys. But when I was with you the next day, I 100% realized that, Joel. It's not about being the strongest. It's about being the most organized. And the main thing I learned on being on the tribe with you was think about the challenge, have a plan before you start, and you need someone to execute it. And I felt like it was a huge lesson for me. To take your time to figure it out before you execute it.
Oh, I like to think that I know things about Survivor, podcasting for so long, but Saturday was like Survivor Challenges 101. Because we were walking out and each of us was looking for something different. Somebody's looking across the water. Somebody's looking for puzzle bags. Somebody's looking at the pitch to see what's set up. And by the time we got to the first mud hole, we already knew probably what the challenge was going to be. And even so, we had already worked out signals and tips for challenges from last season. That's how we spent our downtime, getting Troy Zan to pick out how he's going to slingshot balls at us for us to catch in nets, because we're thinking about last year's. I mean, it was Survivor Challenges 101. It was really a learning day for me, which was their plan to get me so distracted that I would be delusional, thinking I was safe.
Yes.
Well, it was, it's keeping your head about you, but you need that one thing. I mean, that's just how life works. And you can't have a bunch of people yelling and screaming and going crazy again, because I've had that bad experience. I've been through that terrible experience, and I know where that leads to, and that's why, sometimes I was very boisterous and aggressive, but it wasn't to be a bully. It was to, let's keep us all together, let's keep moving forward, and if you don't do that, you end up like the other group where you got 4 people standing there watching the other 4 work, and you're done. And, I call you big man just because, you're a big dude, and we were pushing, and that's what and in the heat of the moment, big man grabbed that, and then, I remember the first time Wendy kicked the axle.
Yeah.
And she fell down, right? It kicked her back or something?
No, I didn't fall, but it was a pretty weak kick.
It was pretty weak, and I barked, and Wendy changed immediately.
Yeah.
And her response was the right response. Don't sit there and say, don't yell at me. It's, let's just win this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you told us that Saturday morning. You said, look, don't take anything I say personal. I just want to win, but let's have one barker, and then we'll just follow along at it. And it worked. It absolutely worked.
You know what? Y'all are hilarious. Y'all are hilarious. You three, no matter what topic I throw at you, it always goes back to Saturday when we all 3 played together.
Okay.
It always goes back to that.
Dwayne, that's all I have. I don't have a Sunday. All I have is Saturday.
Let's talk about Friday. There's people listening that played on Friday.
Ask them about Friday. I got to get my power cord. I got to go get my power cord.
All right.
Ask me about Friday.
So, David, Wendy, when you're watching Survivor and you got that tribe that's in the lead, they got in the canoes, they got back, they ran around, they got all the puzzle pieces, and their puzzle guy makes it to the puzzle first. Surely they're gonna win. That's not what happened. Poor David.
It was so close, David. It was so close.
That was impressive.
So close.
That was a very impressive move.
Yeah,
I was so sure we had that one.
I was so excited for David. I mean, I'm like, awesome. David gets to be the puzzle guy. The guy he says you don't want to be. He gets to be the puzzle guy.
You know what?
And
I was the puzzle guy because nobody wanted to be the puzzle guy.
Brooke
you did an awesome job.
Yes, you did, but Brooke beat you.
That's because she looked at how I started.
Can I just say something?
What?
Brooke beat you, and she looked good doing it.
Oh yeah. Brooke
She
is.
has a smile like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna
That's
beat you,
because
David.
that's because Brooke smiles at you and then she brings out the sword
Yeah.
behind her back.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, that's Brooke.
yeah. Brooke
That was
smiling,
when
David.
we did that. That was a huge comeback. We had lost the lead because Jamie was screwing around trying to act weak. Jamie, I think, had a strategy that if he acted inept, that we wouldn't get rid of him. And instead, he just threw us so far behind, and they had such a lead, and Brooke just stayed cool. She is cool. That woman is cool. She is, again, she's like Wendy. She's one of these people that you just don't see them coming. And, she's a very, I mean, Brooke was impressive, man.
David, I'm going to ask you something. David, were your hands shaking? Because I felt like you were nervous, but then you said you
what
weren't.
made me nervous? No, I wasn't nervous. What made me nervous is that the pieces wouldn't stay in. They kept falling, and it was the same. And I made the mistake of continually putting the top pieces in because I knew where they went. And the third time they fell out, I just put them on the ground and said, "Fine, I know where you go. Let me go from here."
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I will say that
even
though we came in second for that, it was a huge boost, I think, for all of us on the Tawadi tribe that we had the lead the whole time. We still came in second, and it was a good start to our day, I think.
Right.
thank you, Wendy.
Yes, and all day, fans, they were playing for rewards, right? So first, second, and third place got rewards. Last place, I got nothing for you. Our little Jeff Probst wannabe. I got nothing for you. But he did a great job. I'm just messing with him.
Oh, hey, I love that guy.
Oh,
John
wonderful.
brought a legitimacy to it immediately.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we came hard to play. And if he wouldn't have played that well, he wasn't doing an impersonation of Jeff Probst. He was doing his own thing. He brought legitimacy to it as well, and he really made us feel like, okay, yeah, we're going to play hard in this. I think he did a wonderful job. I love how he did it, and I told him before I said, don't change anything about what you're doing. You be you. And he brings a lot of legitimacy to it so that you don't feel so stupid about trying so hard and you're not playing.
Right. I really like John, and I was messing with him. John and I are friends, so I wasn't.
I love that. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. So anyway, that was just one of the challenges. Then I don't know the order of them, but one of the ones that I was so impressed with was they bring out the 3 barrels and the 2 pieces of wood. And I watched that on the show, and thank God I'm not on the show to have to do it. And now they're out there doing it. Oh, my goodness. What an amazing experience to be able to play that, to be able to do that.
And that's why the crazy thing is after 3 or 4 days, I genuinely feel like I made friends for life because you're doing this thing that seems crazy to do. We had 2 big guys in our group on these 2 little boards. It was incredible. No one fell off. It was awesome.
It was tough. That's we had done something like that with ours, and it was all about keeping your wits about you. I'm surprised that nobody fell off. Did nobody fall off on any of the teams?
But one team lost it for themselves at the end, but
they were super heavy. Those things were. I think there was a 150-pound or 200-pound barrels. Those were really, really heavy. I can't believe that the purple team actually made it to the end and had to go all the way back and almost made it back in again. That was exhausting. That was an exhausting challenge.
Yeah. You know how I said this wasn't your summer camp games. This is an hour-long challenge, y'all. This thing, I don't know if it was that long, but it took a long time. Yeah. And because it's a legit challenge. What I thought was funny was I would be, and I know y'all didn't hear any of this, but I would be sitting around some of the dream team that played all of the challenges the weekend before, and they'd be like, oh, well, they need to be doing this. Whenever we did it, we just flipped them over, and it was a lot quicker. They need to be doing that. It was quite funny listening to the dream team. Yeah.
It was worth it.
So what were some other favorite challenges from that Friday?
Well, I'll tell you, the hardest one. The hardest one was the one with the weights with the ropes were all attached running.
Yeah.
I am 5 feet tall and not very big, and I'm running with that was for me the most physically challenging of the whole weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
Dangerous. Absolutely. And the most dangerous. Troy Zan even said to the production crew, guys, I thought I was going to twist an ankle or something because you were not only going uphill and downhill, but it was a little uneven ground and stuff. I think they're going to redo that one if they do it again.
Yeah. Well, Jeff,
because-
my friend Jeff, dislocated his elbow. They had to bring him ice every night.
Yeah.
He was on
Well,
the
that-
other side.
Here's a great example of how, past experiences. I think a lot of people, when they come into these challenges, they're so afraid to show that they're weak. And the most important thing is understand what you're good at. Don't overextend yourself, because what you could do is end up taking on the team. So Nina, she's not weak, but those things were heavy. And what happens is these teams would be running, and all of a sudden they would trip, and they would have to stop their whole team, and it would be a mess. So, our thing was, as soon as you got a ditch, yell ditch, we stop, you throw them on my shoulders, and we keep on going. Because the worst thing we're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to keep on going. All of a sudden you just collapse, you take down your whole team.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, why we ended up catching up and winning, because we came up with that plan that if you're going to go before you fall and drag us all down to the ground, because teams kept on doing that, and that's how they ended up losing. That, to me, that was the hardest thing of the day. I mean, for you guys as well, wasn't that like the hardest one?
The hardest.
That was for me, and in fact, though, for me, that was also the most impressive for the ladies of our tribe, for Wendy and for Katie and for Heather and for Chris, because when we tried to go around, Bob and I admitted we're going to struggle with this. I mean, because as big as we are, and we're not marathoners, but we'll give it our best shot. I think we got 2 laps, and Bob and I were ready to go, and the girls were willing to take our bags. So how shameful was that, that these ladies are willing to take our bags? But in the second round, when we played the green team, when Jeff hyperextended his elbow, we had to stop, and they were losing players left and right. And I went over to our team and said, look, guys, me and Bob are already out. Chris was falling down with all the bags that he had, and I'm like, guys, we've got a pot, we've got rice, we've got beans, we got flint. We're going to eat tonight. We're going to be fine. If we don't win this challenge, we don't win this challenge. But this is where don't hurt yourself, don't kill yourself. We're going to be fine. Here I was thinking we're going to be fine tonight. We got all that we need. So I didn't want them to feel like they had to win 3rd place. If we get 4th place in one, we get 4th place. And it's like, to me, it was a coming together for the team. And as it worked out, the green forfeited because they were just out of bodies. They ran, and it worked out in our favor. But to me, that was a moment that I thought we got to come back together, because me and Bob have put these 4 people in a bad situation, because we've already dropped out, and it's going to be bad. So I wanted to say something.
Yeah, and I was personally proud of myself, because I never fell or anything.
Yeah,
that's I was literally winded from the first second of that. It was like the hardest thing physically I did all weekend.
Yeah, that was very. When we caught up with our final team, I don't think I could have made it another half lap around.
Right. It was very grueling.
I was really spent. That was a great challenge, though.
I can speak from. Oh wait, no, I didn't have to play it. I was up there eating a donut. Sorry.
Yeah.
So part of the highlight for that day, for the Friday for me, besides, oh man, they had this amazing breakfast pizza with scrambled eggs and ham and stuff, and I ate really well. So anyway, one of the highlights of the day for me, though, is watching my best friend David throw a ball over Troy Zan's head.
Oh yeah.
That was
the
awesome.
goal and scoring. I was like, way to go, David. And Joel, you even tried to psych him out by hitting him on the butt.
Well, he's got a cute butt.
Yeah.
I think we should have just kept on just running off the end of the dock. For me, I had a little bit more of a flow to that, but
yeah, y'all were hitting the rim, and I was getting very worried about that, because Chris was trying his best to block it, and you guys were getting closer and closer. I wasn't getting near the rim with the jump. Once we stopped at the end of the pier, I was dead on, but man, you keep making me jump, I'm going to have problems.
Well, that worked out.
I thought it was awesome. David had his moment.
Hey,
that was a great win. That was such a great win. That was our first win that day.
Keep your sandbags in your barrels. Just give me a ball and let me throw it at something. That's all I want to do.
Really, Joel, I think your butt slap is what inspired him to greatness.
Possibly. I
really
hear that a lot.
I
Usually
really
it's
do.
Sexual harassment.
And you know what thing I have found about watching Survivor, even on the regular show and even out here at the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge, it's like being in the hospital. You start just not caring what you look like or what you're wearing.
Yeah, I've got my shirt off out here, people. I mean, I don't even walk in the front yard of the house with my shirt off.
Yeah.
And now I'm out here in the middle of 200 people with cameras. There's pictures of me all over the internet. You just forget. You don't even care.
I've never seen so many sport bras and men's long underwear down to their,
Trust me, I told Dwaine, I said, you will not see me without a shirt.
Yeah,
But
well,
when we
guess
got to that cart challenge, I said, you know what? I am tired of sleeping in a wet shirt. I can't sleep in another wet shirt. My feet are frozen, about to fall off. Shirt's got to come off. As soon as we get out of the water, where's that shirt, please?
Yeah.
Let's not forget that the very first Thursday night with the rafting challenge that we did, we were drenched within 10 minutes, and we didn't know how long it took, but they told us afterwards it took us 2 hours. We were the losing group, and I think it took them maybe an hour 40. But we were soaked all night long, even with the big bonfire. My sneakers were still wet the next day.
Yeah, we were fully clothed when they told us to jump on the barge. We didn't have any chance to change or do anything.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about 3 of the challenges, maybe 4 for Friday. Were there any others that on Friday that stood out to you, Joel? Maybe as wow, this is like just as good as what you get on Survivor.
Well, all of them. I mean, it's the puzzles were one thing. That rope, that chase challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty difficult. It comes down to, it really doesn't matter what it is. They can make a challenge out of anything. It's for us, for our group, is we just wanted to dominate that first day and get as much as possible, because we were pretty miserable the night before. I don't think I slept at all the night before, because we were actually out in the woods. It was wet. We wanted to make sure that let's win as much as we possibly can so that we can go in that night and actually sleep, eat, and chill out. That was our plan. And when that board came out, we knew what we wanted. We want that, and that. And we got everything that we wanted.
Right.
So the challenges themselves, I mean, they were getting taxing with no sleep and stuff like that. I mean, it was getting pretty tough. I mean, Troy Zan, he said he was tired, but that guy, he's impressive, man.
Yeah, he's got
really
1% body fat on his whole body. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty impressive guy, and just also has just about the best personality. He's a special guy. But we still none of us we never fought, but we were uncomfortable and we were tired, and we knew no matter what, I don't care if we would have been playing tiddlywinks, it would have been the same effort, because we just wanted to make sure we could sleep that night. We didn't think it was going to end up that day like it did.
Hey, just to give us more drive in the Friday challenges, we didn't know where you guys had been, and all of a sudden we turn around and you're running out from near this volunteer food tent.
Yes.
So we're not sure what you guys have been doing the last 24 hours, but as far as we're concerned, y'all had a full course meal the night before.
Yeah, we did think it. That was the first thing when we all merged together. I was like, oh, good. They were out there too last night. So.
Now,
we had it worse. Our location was worse than what you guys had.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to tell you this, Joel, but I actually drank a cup of your water before y'all got out there.
You're welcome.
Now, David, you actually used them coming in later in the game to garner not really animosity, but kind of pick you up to defeat these guys. Didn't you kind of use the whole hey, they've been staying in hotels and stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a feeling that they weren't exactly in the 4-star restaurants or anything, but yeah, I kind of spread the word a little bit that, did you see where they came from? There's a food tent up there, and these guys come hiking out of the food tent. Where have they been?
That's right.
We had to spend the night. We had to go from a barge to a out in the woods and run through the woods in the dark and barely got a fire going, and these guys come out with their backpacks from the food tent. So, we need to push that a little harder.
And I'll tell you one thing I really learned about myself, but I think everyone learned as well, is how much adrenaline kicks in that situation. Because Thursday night, we didn't get a fire till late. I think we were all too spent to make rice, even though we had rice, so we didn't have any dinner. We did get rice together in the morning before the challenges, but I was showing up with I think I slept 10 minutes the whole night, soaking wet. My clothes were still wet, but you just get into go mode, and that's kind of a cool thing to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think all 18 of the newbies plus the 6 or 24. I mean, that was one really, I think, amazing thing that came out of the whole weekend, just to realize what you can push yourself to do.
You saying that, and we are about to get to the end of Friday with the next twist, but I want to bring up something that relates to what you just said. Candace, who David and I had the privilege of spending Monday with her and Lisa and Dan Foley, kind of going to lighthouses and hanging out in Maine, which was kind of fun. But Candace, from the day she came on that Thursday, to when the game was over, it's like there was a part of her that she didn't even know existed that arose, and she's like a different person. I mean, it was amazing, and she just said it just freed her so much. It was really cool that this experience really can change your life.
Well, the crazy thing is that I think from Kristen, who was the first out, to me, who won, I think we all left feeling that way. And
Right.
we've had so much chatter back and forth with each other. It was, you can imagine being together for 39 days. There's a genuine bond between us all after 4 days.
Right.
A genuine one.
All right, so
I agree with that.
go ahead, Joel. I'm sorry.
Yes.
All right, so the end of Friday, they're all thinking, and I know David was, because David was not very happy with this at all. At the end of Friday, they're all thinking, great, we get to go back with our tribe. We get to take the spoils of our day, right? And keep in mind, they've been fighting all day long to win all of these rewards.
Yep. And we had rice
Right.
and beans. I was so excited for rice and beans.
And worst case, we would get 1 or 2 survivors with us. That was the worst case scenario we were thinking.
Right.
We'd split 'em
So
up.
Andy Baker and the production crew decide they're going to do a tribe swap. And not only are they going to do a tribe swap, they're going to get the 4 tribes down to 3. So they get one person from each tribe, or they get one person from each tribe to draw a colored rock or whatever. And the 3 colors, everything but yellow, became the new tribe captains. And they did a reverse schoolyard pick, which we've already talked about this. But it's interesting that a reverse schoolyard pick usually is the weakest players get picked first and get put on the other tribes. But because of what Chris P did, which we've already talked about, it became this boom, boom, boom stacking of tribes. This, I'm going to make your tribe better, you make my tribe better, except Joel, you threw him a curveball at the very beginning, and you know it. Right? Right? You didn't give him Jared.
No.
You want Jared and you wouldn't give it to him?
He didn't ask for Jared.
Oh, okay.
Now, he
But
may
you
say
knew you
something
didn't want
else.
him on there.
He,
what?
he may say something else. I think he wanted us, I think by having Jared on the tribe, he wanted us to eliminate Jared for him.
Okay.
I think Chris had thought this out a lot. And again, you can't overthink this stuff. And you don't want to reinvent the wheel. But I think he was trying to make like a monster of a team that he was aligned with.
Right.
And I think he saw how that first day went as well. This is probably something that, and he saw how the first day went, and he's like, I'm going to try to team up with these guys and get in their good graces. He probably, how could you foresee? And that's that is the difference in this game. The difference between a person who wins in Wendy and loses in the first couple out there is as thin as a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And he made a move. He then, Nina had the immunity idol from that bottle the day before. They didn't see it coming. They thought he flushed it out, and boom, he was gone.
Yeah.
It would have been, again, how would the game have played differently if all of a sudden Chris P was with us?
Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it ends up 3 different tribes, and what they did was say that like Brooke got put on Joel's tribe. Brooke got to go pick anything from her tribe's spoils of the day, and take it to their tribe. So all the rewards got divided up into those 3 tribes, and they each got taken to a different camp, and that was the end of Friday.
Oh, Jamie and Nina had to be pissed.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were right there with us, and all of a sudden we're at the end of the day, and we kind of ended up okay because we had the 4 of us, we had everything we wanted, plus we had a tent.
Yeah.
Well, your tribe won the most, but our tribe won the second most that day. So between 3 from the Blues and you guys, when we went to the merge, our merged tribe definitely had the most that night.
Well, and the tent thing, we didn't even know where that came from.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like, hold on, the little lady is bringing a tent.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just seeing it. I can remember plain as day. She had her hair back in a ponytail, and I was thinking, did she just get here?
I don't know who she is, but she has a tent.
Well, the crazy thing is I didn't even want to sleep in the tent because the night before, because we all slept in the tent, and I'm literally 5 feet tall, so I got squished between everyone, And one of our tribe mates, Katie, brought like an emergency blanket that crinkled like tinfoil. So between people snoring and I'm stuck next to her, I couldn't sleep at all in that tent.
Yeah.
So I brought it, but I was actually not so sad to give it up.
Yeah.
Wendy, when you came over, I got to say, I think it helped you because, you know, again, it's not a low expectation thing. I just didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, because you had so many big personalities that we came against there that they overshadowed you, and all of a sudden when we came into the tent, into the tribe, and you were laying on the ground curled up with a rock, I was like, who is this person? And you know, then I talked to you. I mean, then you just continue to impress me. So, you know, Big D, you know, I would imagine that, you know, when you were laying out there and stuff like that, I expect that of you, you know. But when you see somebody, you know, and again, it's the chauvinism in me, but it's the truth. You know, when you see somebody like Wendy, you just didn't expect it. She just kept on surprising me.
Yeah.
She never flinched out there. She got up. She felt sick. She came back. I'm fine. She got another rock. She was fine. Yeah, she never flinched.
Right. Go cute. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear bitching about it. I don't want to hear complaining about it. We got other things to do. We have so many things to worry about. We don't need a big deal about anything like that. And she never made. So you're absolutely, you impressed me a lot.
But see, I think one thing that's interesting, because I've loved the game since your season, is that sometimes, like on TV or something, it's the big moves that get the most noticed, the big bold moves, the larger than life people. But I think sometimes it's the subtleness. You talked about Brooke sort of having a subtle look or a raised eyebrow between you and Jill. So I think I played a strong game. It was just a subtly strong game, and I think that's just as valuable. And in a situation that was as condensed as this, obviously a better play, you know, than the people who made those huge moves. And so that's what I love about the game, because you can get different people together. Every time it's a different dynamic. Every time the little person can be successful, or the great boisterous one can be, and it's just, you know.
See, now, talking about the tent, and I got a ration from Dwaine after I got knocked out. He said, why did you let them sleep in the tent with Matt? You let those 4 people already together go in there with the one guy by himself. And I said, well, you know what? How awkward would it have been if I'd have gone in there and sat between all of them? I said, don't talk, because I'm here.
Big
But
D.
What I would have said is, I would have talked your face off while we separated Matt out. The 4 of us never sat in that tent and talked to Matt. You know, that's not how it works. Now, if it's your first time going through it, we went in the tent. We had the doctor take him outside the tent and go away to make sure that nobody could see that. That's when it all took place. And these conversations only took place a minute, 2 minutes.
Right.
They're quick.
Because I told Dwaine, I said, one of the first things I heard was, Matt, tell us about your tribe. So while y'all had Matt to yourselves and Matt was in Survivor Heaven with 4 survivors, Wendy and I were out there mumbling back and forth, and that's when we were going over the numbers and saying, look, we got to sell them on the fact that we can get them 1 or 2, we can get Heather and Chris and Katie, or 1 or both or 3, and we can help them knock out the rest of these people. That's what we got to sell. And Wendy's just nodding, she's agreeing. And then we break up, and then we lay down for a while, and then we'd come back and talk about something else again. But yeah, so that's what we were weighing on the same thing. I wasn't worried because I knew y'all were going to talk to Matt. I'm like, they can have the time all they want. We had the tent last night. I wasn't too excited about going back in it either.
We never put any stock that you guys were going to flip anybody to us. You know,
I didn't think so.
Because you wouldn't. You know, it was, you know, we knew that next day we were going into it, that we had to absolutely plow through that whole day to have any chance at all, because no one coming in, you know, it was so stacked against us. And we talked about the other tribes. We wanted to eliminate your friends, not bring your friends over.
Right. Oh, believe me, and that was hard for us. Me and Wendy loved winning, but it was hard watching our friends get a tribal after tribal. Yeah. Now, I wonder if Chris would have been as open to the plan if he'd have known the second place would go to tribal every challenge.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
That
was a big. We figured that a little bit. We're thinking, okay, maybe we'll have to get rid of 2 people per, and then we started thinking, you know, there may be just eliminations, like the last person done with something, like there won't even be a vote. All sorts of things are going to get thrown in there. So, you know, we were like, we can plan a lot, but we'll have to stay fluid and have to stay smart. And even with when flipping Wendy and stuff like that, you start flipping people over. All of a sudden, the person that you're aligned with over here could come in last in a challenge. There was way too many things out there. So for when they say, Wendy, why didn't you flip against the survivors? Well, because something could have happened. I mean, Wendy,
and it would have with the food challenge.
right. I mean, things could have happened, and all of a sudden, like, right, the food challenge, and also, let's say, like, the last person finished with the food challenge is gone without a vote, and that was the person that Wendy had planned on being with, and all of a sudden, Wendy's on the outs.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Always safer to make a plan and stick with the plan. You can look back, but if you at least that you didn't just start running around being a nut. And look at the first show. Look what Jenna did after the merge. Look what Greg did after the merge. Everybody was running around. Everybody used him for something. You just had to kind of keep yourself together and make a plan and work that plan and stick to the plan.
I was gonna talk about something. You were talking about y'all were in the tent. Matt was in heaven. I mean, he was in heaven. Wendy and David were in heaven because they got to sleep. And Bob was in heaven because he got to build the biggest fire of his entire life.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
He basically cleared out an acre of land.
Right. we went through a lot of wood those nights.
We had an awesome fire.
Yeah.
Bob,
I walked down to camp and there was a 10-foot tree trunk in the fire.
Right.
Literally a 10-foot tree trunk in the fire.
See, that was another thing, too. When we got back to camp that Friday night, I was beat. I was done. I was ready. And all of a sudden, these 4 stinking survivors get on this second, 4th gear they have and go start collecting everything that's not planted. And I'm like, well, I can't sit here and let them collect everything. I gotta go collect something. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm with you. I'm trying to keep up with Brooke as she's picking up this and picking up that. I'm like, yep, that's part of the game. I don't want to be sitting there and give them a reason.
Meanwhile,
that's the truth.
Yep.
When we first got.
Go ahead, Joel. I'm sorry.
When we first got back to that camp, and that is something that you just can't get back there and celebrate because it's going to get cold, and let's do our thing now while we had a chance. And we did have a lot that night, and you guys really did step it up. We didn't have anybody that sucked. Right. That is the truth. Yeah. So
you had some that wanted to.
Yeah, but you guys whoever was left there with us, whoever was on our tribe, we were lucky. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been the same if it wasn't the 4 of us being the domineering individuals that we are, or maybe there would have been a little bit of more, I'm going to do my own thing. But it didn't really strike me that you, Wendy, Bob, and Matt were those kind of people.
Right.
So you guys, are right there with us. So you did a pretty good job.
Well, I was pretty confident. When we first merged, I was disappointed. It ended up obviously working in my favor, but I had, you want to spend the night with the people you just did that whole Friday's worth of challenges with. And we'd gotten a fire together at lunchtime. I was pretty confident that the 6 of us would have gone back and actually been much more successful than the 18 of us had been the night before, just because we had worked well together, I think.
Now, meanwhile, y'all were having a blast, sleeping, making fire, having fun with Dan Foley whenever he came by. And the other 2 tribes, and I know this because me and Big Mike and Andy Baker and a whole entourage of onlookers the second night of confessionals. By the way, Big Mike is watching and he says hello.
Hi, Big Mike.
I had a blast getting to know Big Mike. I don't know if he enjoyed getting to know me as much as I enjoyed getting to know him, but Big Mike, I know you're listening. It was a pleasure. And I hope we're friends for life. It was a great pleasure getting to meet you. So anyway, we go to the other camps, and they're all like, oh, the other tribe has 4 survivors on it. What was Crispy thinking? I mean, the whole dynamic of the other tribes was so different than your tribe on that Friday night. And I know because we did confessionals for 6 hours.
Wow.
Were their spirits low, or what was being said?
Well, some of their spirits were low. Like the one tribe, they had no survivors on it. They was such a hodgepodge of people, and they didn't know who to trust, and they didn't really have a cohesive group in that one. The other one had a little more. The one with Nina and Jamie and Candace and Lisa and Carl, you know, and that group seemed a little more cohesive. But they all, at least the impression I got was they all figured, wow, tomorrow we're going to have, you know, we're going to lose some people tomorrow. You know, maybe not as many as they did lose. But
let me get this straight. We had Jamie and Nina and Chris P. and Carl on the same team?
yes. And Lisa.
Well, I don't know what they're complaining about.
Lisa and Candace.
And Tina.
Yeah.
Tina.
Yeah, Tina.
Right.
And,
So you had Lisa too. So you had Lisa, Carl,
well, that was the other stacked
Jamie.
tribe.
That was a stacked tribe, and
Right.
there's a perfect example of you start getting too silly and worried about who you're going to get rid of instead of making a plan for your time, plan for your challenges, and planning to win. In the end, Lisa comes across that merge. No Jamie, no Nina, no Chris P, no Carl. You already lost. You couldn't have made a move. That was the mistake. And a lot of people come in these things and they start wanting to, let's eliminate this. But sure, great, let's get rid of every good player you got and then be imagined. Boy, geez, imagine why I can't put a plan together to maybe kind of make a final run to win.
I think all those people, but a lot of the people that were in that group were the same people I told you about Thursday night at the campground, that I'm sitting there watching them saying they're going to crash and burn because they're trying to play it. You could tell already they were vying for that. They were already thinking individual, I guess is how I'd say it. I want to be a big player. I want it to be known that I'm going to be a player and I'm going to make big moves. And you don't do that on the first night. And then
you don't do that. Right. You don't start making your big moves until you get farther into the game. And again, I've had many years to sit there and bang my 15 years worth after playing the game to bang my head on the wall and mistakes and stuff like that. And they make these mistakes. Now all they can do, you know, like Lisa, she was a formidable individual. But as soon as they got rid of Carl, I mean, Carl wasn't just strong. The dude's really smart, and he's level-headed, and he was the leader of the group. And if he would have come over, if Carl would have made it past that merge, we would have had a real problem.
Yeah.
See, we were sitting at our lockdown spot. We were sitting just close enough to hear. We heard Nina's blind side of Chris, and we heard Carl go. And I was sitting with Troyzan a lot, and he's looking at me like, "What are they doing?" Yeah. And, I mean, we were starting to count up the names and the bodies, and we're thinking, is it a girls' alliance? Are they getting rid of the guys? Because I could tell that Chris and Heather were sticking together. They were doing everything they could to stay together, and those two made it to the end. But what were they supposed to do? I was only guessing that they were thinking post-merge. They didn't want to face Carl in the merge. They didn't want to face, you know, Jared in the merge. And that's the only thing I could imagine. I mean, but you said you got to keep a plan together. When you're dwindling down to 2 or 3 people, what kind of plan are you putting together when you got survivors to face?
Let me see this. So you can only have 4 survivors. There's only 4 of us. They still had Bob over there. They still had these other people over there. So why you're worried about the people on your tribe you're going to compete against? You had 4 people over there that were ready to rip your face off. Worry about them. Take these people with you across that merge. And, you know, Carl was the one that scared me the most.
Yeah, he's very smart, very articulate.
All right,
smart,
so I was watching them from the outside, okay? But I have some inside information. So Lisa and Candace and Tina are not responsible for Chris P going. That is Nina and Jamie.
Sure.
You know, obviously they were going to vote out Jamie first, Jamie or Nina first, and Jamie.
Why?
Because they were survivors and they didn't want them to win.
But why didn't they split the vote? No one thought to split the vote for Nina.
That I do not know.
Forget splitting the vote. As soon as I heard Jamie went, the first thing that popped in my mind, we got this.
Right, because they're not trying to win challenges. Right. Keep Jamie, win challenges, get rid of Nina. But
you got your finish lines. You got your finish line. Get as many good players that you can trust over that finish line, and then see what you can do. Right away, the first person you get rid of, Jamie's stronger than me.
Right.
Physically. He's younger, stronger. You know, he might not have been totally into it in some aspects of it, but I'm like, wow, that's the first dude you got rid of?
Yeah.
Somebody that maybe could kind of throw this or hold this thing together. It was just too much of the big moves too fast, and that's just, you see that a lot. But I was, when you see the people that are the students of the game, they're only seeing the big lights. They're not seeing the small things. They did all the heavy lifting for us.
Right.
So
I like what you said earlier. You said your big move was the 20 moves. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a nice analogy. I like that.
So I don't think they realized that Nina and Jamie had a clue. I mean, had an idol. All right.
Well, they didn't have a clue. They just had an idol.
Well, that's what I changed it to. I'm sorry. I don't think they realized it, and Jamie and Nina. Jamie tried to get them to vote for him first because, and this is a testament to Jamie, he wanted Nina to have more of the experience. Because, listen, y'all, Nina told me and told several others, this is the experience she was hoping for on the CBS show. She got on this show. I mean, not on this show, but but she got at the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge.
For me as well.
Awesome.
For me
awesome.
as well.
And Jamie wanted her to experience that even longer. And so what they did was Jamie got the whole tribe mad at him. He said horrible things. I have it on video. He said horrible things, got the whole tribe mad at him, and trying to get them to vote for him so he could keep Nina. And they did not play the idol. So the tribe didn't think they had an idol. And then the next time they went to tribal council, again, they're wanting to get rid of survivors so that y'all don't join up after the merge. And so they put all their votes on Nina, not realizing that Nina has the idol, and Nina got out crispy.
I wish I saw that tribal council, actually.
That must have been quite a move. That must have been quite a move.
There was huge cheering for our friend Nina. Hi, Nina.
Oh, yeah.
Nina's watching and listening as well. Hello,
Hi,
Nina.
Nina.
Yeah. That was a huge move because we heard that, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding, because we knew she had one.
Yeah. See, they didn't know that.
We did know, and we didn't let our group know because we didn't know who we could totally trust in our group.
Right.
We didn't know we could totally trust Wendy. We didn't know what was going on, but we had one as well.
Right.
And we knew we had one, and we were surprised, but maybe Jamie figured, he's going to go anyways, or one of the two are going to go anyways. But wow, that was a shrewd move on their part. That was really something else.
But wasn't it? Let's go back one step, because what I learned after the game was over, Jared was on the other tribe, but isn't Jared the one that gave Troyzan the clue to begin with? So there was another newbie.
No, it was the clue in the bottle.
Your clue in the bottle. Okay.
Okay,
there was clues in the flags too.
Yeah, Jared stole one of y'all's clues off of your flags.
Yeah.
And what was in there? What were those clues for?
I think they were for idols, but I'm not
The
really
idols by the water jugs. He showed it to us on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. That was the clue that was in the bottle.
Oh, okay. So same clue.
Yeah. So one of the cool things I got to do was I met another two people that will be friends for life, Jordan and Ian. And in fact, Jordan's going to be on our show later on in the season to talk about an episode of season 31, which is going to be a great season. Anyway.
Yeah, super excited.
I know, so am I. But anyway, so Jordan and Ian and I got to be good friends. But Jordan was a handler for the infamous, y'all's tribe. So on Saturday, Jordan and I would kind of talk about what y'all were talking about, and it was such fun. And then one time, David goes to the porta potty, and he goes,
I don't even remember what I was so excited about. So tell me what I was so excited about.
So excited. He comes up to the porta potty. He goes, cameraman, because as God is my witness, I did not show David any deference. He was not my best friend when he was in the game. All right. Now, once he was out of the game, he was. But during the game, poor guy. He comes up. He goes, man, I hate to be this kind of guy, but this is Survivor, and we're going to get out Matt, and that's the plan, and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, he does all this stuff, and I'm just filming it, listening. I go, okay, man, see you later. And I turn around to Jordan. And I go, oh, he's delusional.
Well, it was by default. I wanted to keep Wendy in, and I wanted to keep Bob because I figured he'd stay. And I'm like, okay, it's done. I feel confident they're gonna go with it because we said, especially when he gave up that idol, I asked Dr. Jill. I said, if we lose and he asked for it, are you gonna give it to him? She said no. He should have never taken it in the first place. I said, okay,
Yeah.
all's good and well. And then we lose that challenge, and we go walking, and I'm like, nobody's talking. This ain't good. As soon as I sat down on that stump, I thought, you know what? Oh boy, I said, at least I made it this far.
Yeah. Tell them what you said when you voted. The one time you got to vote.
The one time, thank you for that at least. I went up to vote. I said, if this vote is a surprise, then I'm going to have a really bad day. Because I knew I was the only one voting for Matt at the time, and I said, but if this is not a surprise, then I'm okay. But I have a feeling this is probably going to be my only vote in this game. Yeah.
Well,
so I held it up, folded it, and put it in the bucket.
When you went, we struggled so hard that day, and we fought so hard that day. It was not easy. None of them are easy. I guess, like I said, I'm not totally built for this. Even with Troyzan and Brooke, I still have a lot of even just today, I just feel kind of yucky about it. It's not the best. It is the hardest game there is. But even when you went and stuff like that, I mean, it's not good. Bob, oh my gosh, that just lingered. I feel that. But that's the game. We didn't invent the game.
Nope.
But we struggled so hard that day, Dave, and we really pulled some stuff out.
Yeah.
And
it was the nicest feeling. You guys didn't make me feel bad at all. When y'all got your merge shirts and headed off, Troyzan grabbed me, said, "Dude, you were not on my radar, but I have to go with my group. I didn't want to do it, but." He said, I appreciate playing with you, man, but we couldn't let you stay in the game. I mean, it was the nicest feeling that you guys made me feel that way. So even if it's not true,
we cared.
Nice to say.
Well, that's the hardest thing about the game because you're truly surviving with people, so you have to rely on each other, like physically, mentally, and emotionally when you're sleeping on dirt and you're wet. And then you have to get rid of everyone. It's crazy, but it's what's made it around for the last 16 years.
So that night, y'all got to go back to camp. I guess you had rice or something. I'm not even sure. I went back to Bob Crowley's house and had lobster. But and I gotta tell you something, man. I've never had as good a corn on the cob as I had in Maine.
Oh, it's delicious, and the lobster was the best.
Oh my goodness, corn on the cob.
It was pretty good.
And when I was growing up, we would get butter and we'd put it on the bread and we'd roll the corn on the bread on the butter. Here, Peggy Crowley, just nicest woman you've ever met in your whole life, and I get my ear of corn, and I was gonna put it on my plate, and she goes, "Oh no, you got to get butter on it." There's this big old stick of butter on the table. She goes, "Get that thing in there really good." So anyway, so Sunday, y'all want to say anything about Sunday? Sunday's the last day. That's whenever.
Sunday they had that breakfast pizza again. It wasn't bad. It was pretty good for us.
I was spent, and again, all that pre-work. What are the moves? And and I had to keep in my mind. The hardest thing for me to keep in my mind was that I did all my physical work on Saturday. All my physical work was done, and not to sit there and try to push it as far as I did all day Sunday was my hardest thing not to do. Falling into that water and just getting out. Not standing there with that ball forever, because we had our numbers. And once that started to look like that, I wanted to try to save myself for that end of that day, because I knew that's when it was going to get real bloody. So we did all of our hard work the day before, let all these people pound on each other to try to win immunity, and beat each other down and beat each other down. And the hardest thing is to shut down that competitive spirit, to sit there and hold on to that rope and go against Wendy for 35 minutes and burn my hands out and then be done for the whole day just to get that immunity when I knew we had the numbers, especially after that first vote. After that first vote, when we got rid of Tina and they had no idol, and then it was just going to be a pagonging, which was perfect for the rest of the day. That was the hardest part, especially with me and the doctor. And the doctor and myself, she is such a mentally strong person we kept on, and even with Brooke as well, it was going to be us three, and the final three, and and then having to say, make the move, that we're going to have to get rid of Troy sooner or later, because he's really a strong individual. that was the hardest thing, was to spend Sunday not killing myself until that rope challenge. That is when I tried to kick it in, and I got tangled up with Brooke, and I just could not catch Troyzan, and then I really started getting worried. I'm like, oh, this guy could run the table on us.
Right. Now, y'all were going to get rid of Troyzan on that challenge. I mean, on that,
Yes,
on that one.
That was the plan. The plan was for me to spend the whole day sitting back. You know, if you're going to run a race, 400 meters, I got like the second and third place guy like right ahead of me. I'm just going to pace myself. I'm just going to sit right here. And that was the one where, okay, here we go. Let's take him now. And I got tangled up with Brooke in the ropes, and for like 30 seconds, and it was it. I mean, once you get somebody to lead in the game, that was the physically hardest. And plus, I'm 3 days without sleep. I really expended myself the day before. Nothing. That was really, I almost threw up at that point. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this. And then that puzzle thing came up, and Brooke stepped up. And again, there's the diversity.
Yeah.
There's where the diversity matters in your alliance. You can't just have all a bunch of dudes. You can't just have all a bunch of all female or whatever. It has to be the physical person, the puzzle person, the thinker, the leader. It has to be in there, and we have that. And that's where, you know, Brooke came in and did it. I mean, that's where diversity in an alliance is. Well, number one is loyalty, and number two is diversity. Yeah. And, you know, that's where Brooke stepped up, and, you know, and again, I love Troy. He's one of the best guys I've ever met in my life. But, you know, he had to go.
Yeah. I just stood there watching that challenge, and I think I was standing with Dwaine at the time, and I was like, man, Kevin Thurber and his crew, man, they outdid themselves, because that, as small as that little section was, that rope challenge blew my mind watching you guys go through that thing. I was tired just watching you.
Brutal, because you didn't just go up and down with those logs.
Right.
It came back in. So if you're going to come in, you have to kind of go up and around and over, and then once you get tangled up with somebody, I mean, you're really in trouble. Yeah. And, you know, I felt that was the hardest one, because Bob and I, you know, we had spent a lot of time talking in the woods to try to keep them in our fold. Yeah. And that was the thing, Wendy. Jill, you were her responsibility, and Bob was my responsibility. And that's how we split it up.
Well, he was harder responsibility because he was very quiet.
Oh God, yeah, and we're similar. Bob and I are similar. Like I build, you know, I remodel. This is what we do. So we talked about that. But right, they were never going to flip him, because those other girls trying to talk with him.
Yeah, he was shut down.
Like, whatever, I'm going to go over here and fall asleep. You know, guy just disappeared. Bob literally just disappeared one night.
For the whole night.
Just laying on the ground. Yeah. He was a tremendous man. Scary, because his hands were like, you know, vices. That guy was like so powerful.
So Dr. Jill looks at Joel and says, "You got Bob?" They look at Bob. He's asleep. He goes, "Yeah, I got Bob."
Yeah. He's good. He's good. You know, so, you know, we were coming down. You know, that was again the third goal. Once it got down to, and then, you know, Jill said when we still had, I think it was Jeff left. She goes, yeah, we're going to get rid of Jeff. She goes, then it's going to start feeding on ourselves, and that's when it came up that Troyzan was 6. And that's the part where, again, the Sioux Hawk crying with the rat speech and all that, that's where the real feelings start to get hurt.
Well, the truth is, I thought, you know, what I needed to penetrate one of you. That was my thought the whole time. I needed to penetrate one of you, and then it could be anyone's game. And, you know, who would think that little me actually won that last challenge?
Well,
but that's the game.
You did.
You know, yeah. But the thing is that, you know, I just had to get one of you, and everyone who was on the merged tribe who was mad at me when Troyzan, because it was supposed to be the time before, when he got voted out. And I really enjoyed meeting Troyzan as well. He's a really wonderful, wonderful person and very interesting life. But when he got voted out, I made eye contact with every single person on the jury and was like, I am not a total idiot. That was going through my mind.
How ironic
I knew what I was doing, somewhat.
That 2 of the 3 people you faced in that final challenge had to go through that rope challenge, and you didn't have to go through that rope challenge.
Yeah,
so that's one of those where you didn't have to, yeah, exactly.
It was like serendipity, it was luck, you know.
Well, it was also, I mean, you got those steps. Those steps, I was talking to Jill today, and, you know, here you are with Jill and Brooke, who are, you know, I know that Jill sat there and threw that ball challenge the day before, but those were two of our better puzzle people in our group. It was just you were clicking, and you were clicking.
Once you start, but the thing is, my daughter was actually watching, and she said that I think it was Dr. Jill was not flipping each piece.
Oh.
There were 2 ways each piece could fit.
Yeah, each piece had to be flipped.
Yeah, you had to try it 2 ways.
I didn't know that.
But each piece you had to try 4. You had 2 pieces. There was 4 ways to try them on each rung.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Once because you had to do 1, 2, then the other side 1, 2 before you do that for sure wasn't in there. And if she was only doing 1, she would have been there all day long.
Right.
Right. Yeah. You dominated on that, and as soon as you won that was ball game.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I didn't know for sure, to be honest, because I thought the people the newbies were desperate to get you guys gone. But they were so mad that I ended up doing it alone that I didn't know that I was not 100% sure that they would vote for me because I thought.
Oh my God.
But they did.
That's why I told you to stay up there. That's why I said stay up there on the top of the thing and take a bow because you just won this thing.
Yeah.
To me, that was over. And you know, when I did my little, the fire. So I walked up to them. I don't know if you guys caught that, but they were going to talk about having an all-girls alliance, and I was so physically spent, even from the rope challenge from the day before. I was so physically done. I walked up to him and I said, you guys just take it, and I really did mean that.
Yeah, you did mean it.
And it was Jill, who was she's so, extreme in her integrity.
She's cerebral though, but she's always thinking something else.
But she's got integrity.
Yes.
And she promised that she would never write my name down. She goes, I'm never going to write your name down now. And between then and when we walked up to vote, I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? And I said, okay, I'll vote first, and I'll wait for Wendy to get up and go because I knew she was going to write my name down. And when you went up, I looked at the host guy, and I said, what's a tiebreaker? And he kind of was like, and Brooke looked up like, what are you son of a bitch? What are you doing? And I'm like, let's make it interesting. And so then that's when I was like, okay, here we go. And then when you sat down and I asked you, who did you vote for? And you go, you. And I'm like, okay, then.
Well, I think there was a lot of complaint I heard because when we came back to our holding area, I did hear that comment when Bob got out. Someone screamed, I don't even want to watch this anymore. So I think from that time, and then Troy went, and then I won a challenge, and then the tiebreaker. So I hope for everyone else it was as exciting an ending as it was for me.
When I heard that, when somebody said that, that was also a big thing for me. Is like, we can't be that big of jerks right now. Because we did kind of push it with messing with Chris and just being survivors, bending the rules and pushing the rules, because that's what survivors do.
Right.
We're jerks. We bend the rules. If you put a rule out there, we're going to break it. And I thought, what, we could push this and just, Brooke did win that and keep Troy's in there and have an all-survivor Final Four. That wouldn't be any good. That wouldn't be any good. And I think the crowd would have not liked that because we all did hear that. We all could feel that. We could all feel that when Bob went, people really didn't like. Gosh, Matt, they booed us for goodness' sake.
Well,
and we all heard that.
And Jill, I heard her say a few times, "Oh, they really don't like me." And it doesn't matter what brought you into the game. We're all people, and your feelings get hurt. When you're trying to just do your best. I think in the end, everyone was so appreciative that it was a real game that we played, and a huge part of that was you guys not, making it easy.
Yeah, we didn't throw that last challenge when you beat us. You just beat us. Little shit.
I'm like, I can't believe when I showed up the first day, I thought I just have to get through tonight. It's like 1 minute at a time. I don't have to think about the challenges because they won't start till tomorrow. And how empowering to do that. It's awesome.
And as impactful as it was for the people that were playing against us, the 4 of us, again, really all 6 of us that played together. I haven't had a chance to talk with Nina much about it or Jamie much about it, but the 4 of us that played together, it was a very impactful experience. Yeah. And it's something that it was definitely one of my favorite weekends ever. And I've done, since our show years and years ago, some pretty large events.
Yeah.
And I would put this right up there in my top 5 things I've ever done.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
me too. I mean, I left feeling like, is it crazy to say this is like, I mean, I travel all over the world. I scuba dive. I do a lot of adventurous, personal things. And I left feeling like this was like the best weekend of my life. And I truly felt it.
Yeah, I mean, where else are we going to build something and we're going to compute and we're going to compete until we're ready to throw up?
Yeah. And we do throw up and compete some more.
Yes, right, absolutely.
You know, I would honestly think, and now, again, I didn't play, and but y'all can tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. If you're trying to get on the show Survivor, you would do well to apply for the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge and play it, because I think that anybody that plays in that game will have an advantage going into the show Survivor.
If you played the Durham Challenge like the previous seasons, maybe not. If you were in there with us this time, and you were actually like Dave and Bob and Wendy, where you were actually with us those days, and you watch how we reconstructed it, and you watch how you put a plan together, and you watch how you execute, that's just because we've been through it, and now you've been through it. So if you were going to do it, that's how you do it.
I think I need to get a video together. I've never applied. Maybe I'll apply.
Yeah, I mean,
there you go.
You know exactly how to do it. I mean, you are, you know, it's all crammed in there. Everything else past this is where the starvation gets pretty heavy duty. Right. You know, you get about 6-7 days. I mean, I was only 18 days, but we were really, really starving that first time. But you start to get in about 5 or 6 days in and not eating. Now you get into a situation where that brings another level to it. That's something that was probably missing here. Right. There was no fear of starvation. And also insects.
And you had
you know, pit vipers, stuff like that. You know, that comes into play. I don't know if it's so much nowadays, but with ours, I mean, it was truly to the point of, you know, it was deadly situations. And also, you know, you're going to have a whole group. You know, there was 4 of us that you were playing with this time, Wendy, but those people making those pot shots at you around the camp, you're not going to have that rookie stuff generally go on so much. It's going to be far more devious. But you'd be fine. You, Wendy, the way you handled yourself, you were, yeah, you had it together.
Yeah. I think if you, even just for this game, which was such a wonderful experience, you have to have a strong sense of self to survive all of that. Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge. We've spent a good 2.5 hours talking about it, and I think it was great.
It was awesome.
David and I are definitely going to be promoting it for this coming year. I believe you can go. David, do you know their website?
I think it's twsc.com.
Yeah, well, just look it up, Durham Warriors or the Wounded Warriors. It's all for a good cause. The winner doesn't win any money. She wins an amazing lobster or crab or whatever it is. There, she's showing it right there.
It wouldn't have mattered if we didn't. It wouldn't have mattered if we didn't win anything, right? I mean, because we would have all fought the same.
Can I just say one thing in closing for me?
Absolutely.
At the end, when we had the big lobster feast, and all of us who played, they let us cut the line. So the woman that I was standing next to, I forget her first name, lovely woman, and she told me she's the poster child for the Durham Warriors Project, and that she was the first person to stay in the yurts as part of this nonprofit. And she told me she was a Gulf War veteran. She never left her house. I think her family called and asked if she could come stay. She spent 3 days, 4 days, I forget how long, but she spent a few days in the yurts, and she brought tears to my eyes. She said it was life-changing. Yep. And 6 months later, she moved off the grid herself, and she said, a year ago, I wasn't interacting with anyone, and I've had a chair at this event all weekend with 200 people watching.
That's right.
So besides this being wonderfully fun for us and for any Survivor fan, just really impressed with the project and what it's doing.
Yeah. And you know how you're the only person at work that likes to talk about Survivor? That doesn't happen on this weekend.
No, it's the best.
No, on this weekend.
I found myself telling stories, and usually if you're on a fire telling stories, I'll tell like 1 or 2, and I'm like, all right, these people don't want to hear this. Hear them around people that actually wanted to hear them.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
And I couldn't have been, you know, I did not know what to expect coming out here, and the people that I met my teammates, even though we had to vote each other out in the end, are some of the best people I think I'm going to ever meet in my life.
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody that was out there, fighting along with us. It was absolutely wonderful, Dave, and Wendy. I never thought that we would have had the time that we had, but it was absolutely.
It was outstanding. It was wonderful.
A big shout out to the Crowleys. They open up their house, they open up their land, and they just really go all out. And so thank you to them. I hope Survivor Talk with D&D is going to be a huge promoter of the Durham Warrior Survival Challenge. So thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Joel, for coming on tonight. Hope you enjoyed doing it, and I'm very glad. It was fun to watch you play. I know they're making a video of the event, so for those of you who are listening to this who were not there, David and I will make sure that whenever the videos are made available. They do have the previous first season and I think half of the second season up on YouTube, but this is something you're going to want to watch. So I encourage you to check it out, and of course to check out Bob Crowley's site. David, do you have anything else to say about the DWSC?
The official site is DurhamWarriorschallenge.com. You can find everything on there. They'll be taking applications probably after the first of the year. So if you're interested, you need to apply. It's going to go quick, though. They get picky. I'll tell you, that's another thing we haven't mentioned. This cast of 18 people, not counting those people in gold shirts that came out of the Holiday Inn, but the 18 people that challenged were such a diverse cast from L.A. to Arizona to Iowa to Utah to, all the way from South Carolina up to Maine and New Hampshire. We covered a lot of area across the United States, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Really, they did a great job picking out this cast.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the people that you wouldn't expect. That little Lisa. First time I saw her, I was like, oh, she's a cute little person with ponytails. Super hard. Yeah, I mean, it's the people that you wouldn't expect.
Yep.
All right, y'all. If you need something else to listen to, go ahead. I'm sorry. What, Joel?
No, I was saying just say thanks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. If you need something else to listen to while you're mowing, grilling, or just not paying attention at work, we have two shows, Movie Talk with D&D and Survivor Talk with D&D. Our latest movie talk is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. That was a fun one to go do. So we want to say thank you to our D&D patrons who support us monthly at patreon.com/survivortalk. And also those of you who shop Amazon using our links, thank you so much. Our website, as of this show, is down. I'm in the process of upgrading it and making it look amazing, but unfortunately, we've had a lot of malware apparently, and we're having to get that fixed. So that'll be up soon. But when it is up, it's stwdd.com, survivortalkwithdnd.com. Join our Facebook group. Just look up Survivor Talk. So that's the show. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, David. Anything else, David?
I'm spent. I'm done. I feel like I just got voted out. So.
All right. See you later, everybody. Bye.